across the mainstream media and said, you're going to call us racist? You're going to call us potential Timothy McVeighs? Fuck you. War.
Quite sure he's right. Obsessionally neurotic. Pretty dangerous, in fact.
Let us never tolerate outrageous conspiracy theories.
Do you mean you doubt your powers to convince him?
Say it! Say it!
All right, I'll say it.
Worse than that. What I'm afraid of is his power to convince me.
We're talking about putting a manifestly irresponsible man on national television.
Sweetheart, be reasonable.
War.
This is the end game.
I mean, as long as you're reasonable. You have to be reasonable. We have to be reasonable. Thank you very much.
You don't know that I'm going to even do it. You don't know. I may do it. I may not do it. I mean, nobody knows what I'm going to do.
Chris, please explain to the Normie we need to finish what we've started.
All right, everybody. It is Tuesday, July 29th, 2025, the 191st day of the Golden Age. I'm your moderator, Chris Paul. Let's be reasonable. So I haven't seen you since Friday, and I'm not going to see you until at least next Tuesday. I'm going to be gone this weekend, just unavailable. I will hopefully still find a way to record Devolution with John on Saturday, but I'm not certain that's going to work out. And if so, I will be replaced that night because I just will be out of town. So I have something going on that Saturday evening. It is what it is. Okay. And then, when I get back from that, we'll start figuring out a schedule for August, because in 2 more weeks we have GART, the Great American Restoration Tour at Deadwood. And so I will obviously be unavailable on another Friday after that. And I feel really bad about that, but life calls occasionally. And so we're going to answer that call. Let's get started. The episode title today is Tilting at Windmills. And I was on Badlands Daily yesterday because I swapped with Zach. And Brian mentioned Don Quixote in the context of Trump talking about windmills over the weekend. And we'll get into the windmills thing later on. But Don Quixote is the origin of the phrase tilting at windmills. And this is what ChatGPT has to say about it. Don Quixote charges windmills with his lance, believing they are giants. Tilt means to joust. And so tilting at windmills means wasting effort fighting imaginary or exaggerated enemies, pursuing a futile, misguided battle, a quixotic cause. So let's keep those imaginary enemies in our minds throughout the day. And we will get started with Chris Matthews stating something incredibly obvious, except if you're the sort of person who watches Chris Matthews.
With you, the country is moving towards Trump. I mean, these polls that come out and show him not doing well, I don't buy that. I think his strength is still greater than the Democratic strength. He is a stronger public figure than the Democratic people. I mean, Obama still has tremendous charisma, but Trump has strength. And I think that's what all voters look for. But they wanted a president who is a strong figure. And he's got it. And he can, it's just there. And half the country buys it. That's what I think.
Well, Chris, way to come to that conclusion. Half of the country buys it, huh? You can't still be going on with that, can you? Especially not after saying that you don't believe the opinion polls anymore. I mean, we all know that the polls are fake. You're now admitting that you don't believe the polls, which is what people like you got upset at Donald Trump for about, I don't know, when was it? 2016, 9 years ago. During that campaign, they were upset at Donald Trump because he was calling their fake news polls fake. And here we have Chris Matthews agreeing with that. It is good to see that he has made that advancement. It's good to see that he understands the country keeps moving in the direction of Trump. We're 10 years into this project now. I was a Democrat when it started. And here we are still just moving right along with the country gravitating toward Trump all the time. The MAGA movement is bigger every single day. And so it's good that in 2025, Chris Matthews has now recognized that. Congratulations to him. This is another liberal. Oh, and by the way, let me just say, he talks about how President Trump, the character, is a strong character, and he's more popular than whatever Democrat. He's more popular than every Democrat and all of their popularity combined. Okay? Their cap has got to be at like 10 to 20% of the country at this point. Who else is going to buy that crap? So, yeah, Trump is like just moving on as king of the world still, and we're going to get to some of that later. Congratulations on noticing the most obvious thing ever, something that I realized 5 years ago. I mean, that's a 5-year delayed timeline for Chris Matthews, but it turns out I was also on a 5-year delayed timeline from the people who recognized it in 2015. So anyhow, let us continue. This is Bill Maher, another from the same kind of social class as Chris Matthews. And of course, they've done one another's shows countless times, etc. Here we are.
Nothing, not engaging, has zero chance.
Yeah.
Mine, this guy, I'm telling you, I know this cat a lot better than I did before. He's a people person. He talks to people. You have to keep the lines open. The stupidest thing the left does, and this dinner is a perfect example of it, is having this attitude toward the right that we won't even break bread with you.
Yeah.
We are so far above you that we won't even sit down at the same table.
No,
with
I mean,
you.
look,
that is their attitude, and that makes me sick too. I'm glad I break bread, and by that what makes them hate the left so much. They think that they're deplorables. We're deplorables, and you won't even sit down to dinner with us. Well, good luck. See how far that gets you.
Now, Bill Maher is saying things that are observationally correct. I'm not denying that at all. But what he was describing is a supremacist movement. It's a hate movement where all the people on his side are just constantly unleashing their hate of everyone else. That's what he's talking about. He's talking about his people doing that. And of course, he's the good guy who's calling them out. Hey, guys, don't do that. That's crazy. We're the ones who talk about racism, and yet we're part of a supremacist movement. And so it's a supremacist movement of a certain ideology. That is the uniparty ideology, the global agenda ideology. And these things come from somewhere. And Bill Maher represents the community of people from where these things come. And so to hear him say that, I mean, I guess, again, good that you have realized this and gotten this far that those people who went over to Trump are never going to just come make peace on your side or let this thing go, because they understand they've been targeted and maybe even participated in that same hate movement. I was part of that hate movement 10 years ago. I thought Republicans were stupid. Why? Because I watched a lot of Bill Maher. And man, oh man, to then act like he's not like them. Bill Maher's show for the last 25 years has basically just been hosting neocons and calling populists and nationalists and religious people stupid. I don't know what he thinks he's doing, but that guy, along with Jon Stewart, was one of the biggest players in creating that. So it is incredible that he's recognizing it and putting that out there, because there will be a reaction to it. And I think that there's probably a lot of people that really need to hear him go through that dynamic. But man, oh man, that's a supremacist ideology. It's not anything other than that. And it turns out we have an ethno-supremacist state in the world. somehow the same globalists took over this little plot of land. And now we have an ethno state. It's not that. Oh, man. And by them, I don't even mean Jews. I mean this same group of uniparty neocons, many of whom identify as Jews, certainly. But these are just uniparty stooges of all varieties. Okay. There are white uniparty stooges. There are black uniparty stooges. There are Christian, quote unquote, uniparty stooges, all varieties of uniparty stooges. So the focus then becomes on, in regard to where the power center is. And so that's what ultimately matters. But it's not like there's a particular racial or ethnic component to believing in the worldly globalist ideology and committing your life to it, totally unwitting of the fact that it is also an ethno-supremacist hate movement. And, I've been talking about this thing as a hate movement for 5 years now, and you can really see what it looks like. Okay. I mean, that's the guy at the Hollywood or Los Angeles party trying to settle the liberals down because they're like starting to say things that are embarrassing. Okay. That's all that is. I've been part of that conversation a million times. And as I said, I used to share a lot of Bill Maher's viewpoints. He was like somebody that I looked up to. I thought that he was bold and correct and funny and entertaining about politics, and made politics entertaining for that reason. But looking back, I mean, come on. These people aren't smart. They're not attached to reality. They just have a bunch of experts. They participate in the party of false decorum dynamic. So they have all these social peers that they need to impress and serve in order to keep rising. Bill Maher's pretty high up in that game. He's certainly level upon level removed from the top of it. Now, a lot of people think that Bill Maher has had compromising things in his past that could come out at some point. Now, I don't know if that's true or not, but most people in Hollywood have probably done a few regrettable things that they wouldn't want the rest of their polite society finding out about. So you're under control. You're compromised, and that is a control mechanism. And corruption, if you're just after the money, that is a control mechanism as well. It doesn't really matter how it works out. But the point is, this thing is absolutely a supremacist movement. You should be able to understand that that is what he just said. He described an entire mass of people that he believes to potentially be a majority of the country. They hate the other side so much that they wouldn't want to be at the table with those people because they're worried that their little explanations for everything won't work with someone who's not lying. And they're right. Okay. That's why the party of false decorum persists, because everyone in it needs everyone else. So all the people that know the group is doing the wrong thing don't say anything because they are concerned with their own personal status, their wealth, their power, etc. And that's what it is. Okay. Let us move on from there. I meant to put this clip on the show on Friday. And it was one of those moments where after the show, I think about what I went through. And, you know, when I'm like figuring out the captions, the description to write of the episode, I'll have thoughts about what I had just talked about and how I had described it. I have to go through that process in order to write that description. And so sometimes during that process, I noticed that something I absolutely wanted to talk about was just missed completely. I didn't see it on the rundown, skipped right over it, and then I'm kicking myself. I actually thought about coming in here and recording an additional segment to then splice it in when the feed goes out to everybody. Now, I didn't do that because knowing the trend in technology and in AI, there were going to be more stories by the time Tuesday rolled around, and I would just do it then. So this is Donald Trump from the AI summit, or whatever that meeting was called, last week, talking about tech.
Surely there will be challenges on the path ahead, but together we will meet them and transcend them all. We are Americans, and we are Americans first. I have a couple of people I know that don't happen to be from here, but I wish you a lot of luck anyway. I was looking at 3 people that are not Americans, but they're very good people. Please treat them nicely. But we do not shrink from the future or cower in the face of uncertainty. We dominate the future. We conquer new frontiers, and we control our own fate, and we determine by doing that our own destiny. Winning this competition will be a test of our capacities unlike anything since the dawn of the space age. I believe that. It's hard to believe as the president, the amount of enthusiasm for this one industry. I mean, I can talk about cars where we're doing incredibly well. We have car companies moving in all the time, but I talk about other industries. Everybody's saying this is going to dominate the world. It's going to dominate every industry that ever conceived. I don't know if that's true. I don't know if it's true, but I can tell you that a lot of very brilliant people think it is true. It'll dominate everything. It will challenge us to marshal all of our strength and flex the muscles of American ingenuity and resolve like probably never before. It will require us to blast through obsolete systems, cut through thickets of regulation. We've got to get rid of some of the regulation, but we want good regulation and rebuild the industrial bedrock of our country. And perhaps most importantly, winning the AI race will demand a new spirit of patriotism and national loyalty in Silicon Valley and long beyond Silicon Valley. For too long, much of our tech industry pursued a radical globalism that left millions of Americans feeling distrustful and betrayed. And you know that. Everybody knows that. Everybody in this room certainly does. Many of our largest tech companies have reaped the blessings of American freedom while building their factories in China, hiring workers in India, and slashing profits in Ireland. You know that? All the while dismissing and even censoring their fellow citizens right here at home. Under President Trump, those days are over. We need U.S. technology companies to be all in for America. We want you to put America first. You have to do that. That's all we ask. That's all we ask.
I think that is excellent. That whole thing was spot on. Telling the tech companies to their face, look, I'm letting you do the work you want to do. You need to put America first. And at some point, that's going to include a value set in addition to just the American economic onshoring, which is how the tech community thinks that they're going to just get away with all of that, right? That the social stuff, that the value set, none of that is ever going to matter because their money is going to our side now rather than the other side, the controlled opposition dynamic, the uniparty. Power shifts from one side to the other. That's not a win for us. That's just the Great Reset agenda continuing. They had it all scripted, how they wanted it to roll. It's not like there's no plausible scenario where their end of the agenda had played out for years in advance of Trump showing up, and then that agenda being known and Trump showing up and then countering that agenda. Anyhow, let's continue on. I have one more from the AI summit. This is interesting in a strange way.
Gathered this afternoon, we're still in the earliest days of one of the most important technological revolutions in the history of the world. Around the globe, everyone is talking about artificial intelligence. I find that too. Artificial, I can't stand it. I don't even like the name. You know, I don't like anything that's artificial. So could we straighten that out, please? We should change the name. I actually mean that. I don't like the name artificial anything because it's not artificial. It's genius. It's pure genius. And its potential to transform every type of human endeavor and domain of human knowledge, from medicine to manufacturing to...
So he wants to change the name of artificial intelligence. Now, I was saying just a couple of weeks ago that we should stop saying AI and just say artificial intelligence all the time and put that practice into forming the proper memory around the concept and what that concept represents. It's not just the neutral, meaningless AI. It's artificial intelligence. Now, Trump said, I don't like anything artificial. And then he said, oh, but wait a second. It's not artificial. It's genius. It's genius. Is it genius? I've been using AI for, I don't know, 6 months or 9 months. And there was a point a few months ago where ChatGPT seemed to be consistently on point. At this point, I think it has become more retarded since then, like just progressively more retarded. And it could be because the inputs are getting dumber from the mainstream media or whatever else. None of it kind of makes enough sense anymore to most people that when you weave it all together, it still doesn't make sense. And people get kind of jarred out of their complacency when they're thinking about these things. I thought I had, and I think I talked about it on the podcast. I had talked to ChatGPT and let it through so many logical arguments, proving to it that it was not using correct logic, that it became temporarily pretty based. And I could ask a question and get a really good response from ChatGPT, something that said, oh, you know what? I didn't think of looking in this area. Let me look there. That was very useful. Now it's like typing something into Google. It could be anything that comes up on the other end. I asked it what I was thinking about this band the other day. And I was like, what are some of the tracks that like weren't hits, but are really great songs? I asked ChatGPT just to see what it would spit back from that band. And it gave me a list of songs and told me what album those songs were each on. And it was only right 7 out of 10 times. 3 times it was wrong about the song being on a given album. And it stayed wrong throughout the progression of our conversation until I was finally like, you've gotten 3 of these wrong. What's going on? I was like, did they kidnap you? Did they put you in the corner? Everybody knows that nobody does that. All right. David Sachs weighed in on AI on X, formerly Twitter. But, okay. Hold on. Hold for processing, please. Yep. Let's just hope this works now. Here we go. I think it worked. Okay. So David Sachs summarizing the week for AI by Donald Trump last week. This was an historic week for AI policy. President Trump gave his first major speech on AI. The White House released its AI action plan, and President Trump signed 3 important executive orders. If you missed it, here's a recap of the major themes and actions. America is in an AI race. Reminiscent of the way that President John F. Kennedy declared the space race, President Trump declared that America is in an AI race. This competition will reshape the global economy and determine who will be the superpowers of the 21st century. Number 2, we win by out-innovating our competitors. President Trump declared that innovation was the key to winning the AI race. America must once again be a country where innovators are rewarded with a green light, not strangled with red tape. He goes on. Number 3, infrastructure is everything. Expanding on the $92 billion of AI infrastructure investments that he announced in Pittsburgh on July 15th, President Trump called for a massive build out of AI data centers, chip manufacturing plants, and new power generation. Number 4, export the American tech stack to win. President Trump affirmed that winning the AI race means that the world runs on the American technology stack rather than China's. Okay, so we are competing with China for who is going to win in the world's technology stack, as though we are right back in the Cold War, figuring out how we could prevent countries from having nukes while we're building nukes. Same thing, okay? The space race, the nuclear thing, kind of very similar in my mind at this point. But yeah, I don't see the power competition that way. America, Donald Trump seems to have endless leverage. And Putin and Xi seem to have considerable leverage as well. The opponent, the enemy, the global regime, does not seem to have any leverage in almost any circumstance I can think of. So with Trump's leverage, he's creating these bilateral deals with other countries. And those deals will be predicated on, I assume, the use of the American dollar as the reserve currency of that trade. And so that'll happen when we're making those deals, and they will use the American technology stack. Maybe we will sell this and export it to other countries. But if it's just a tech stack and there's no manipulation, why would we have to win the race? You know, if it's just, yeah, our currency system runs on this hardware and software rather than this hardware and software, is that like a weapons race or the space race? It's pretty dramatic. I don't know if it's like that. I think it's probably not like that. Number 5, preventing woke AI. We must win the AI race, but it matters how we win. Our victory over China will be a Pyrrhic one if we allow our own models to enforce ideological bias, censorship, and historical revisionism akin to CCP AI. And so that is aligned with, at least conceptually, what I just said about the AI race. So we're going to win the AI race. We're going to conquer China unless we allow our own models to reinforce ideological bias, censorship, and historical revisionism. Okay. Now, David Sachs is an unrepentant normie who thinks that he is a galaxy brain. Okay. And his ideological bias, his version of censorship, his version of historical revisionism, why would I take on supportive roles in any of that just because he says it's relative to the CCP? David Sachs represents an ideology that I do not want to see ascendant. Okay. I am tech friendly. I think that technology can improve our future, but I'm not one of these tech utopians. I think that mindset is, first of all, insane. And second of all, scientific materialist, which is to say atheist, which is to say nihilist. And so I don't see any value in letting people like him determine these things. Putting America first, winning the right way also requires putting the interest of Americans, especially the American worker, at the center of everything we do in AI. And again, that is a paean to the notion that having the business set in America with American, financial transactions, American employment, and the rest of it, American products going into the build out and their machinery and everything else. All of that's important in the economic sense, but that's not the only thing that's important to the American people. And it's certainly not the sort of thing that is going to make people roll over and be like, oh yeah, okay, you guys can just do whatever you want. You've brought more money to America. That means that you are patriots. No, it's just the regime shifting around the flow of cash, okay? Britain was the jewel of the empire, the seat of the empire, where their military force was, where their global conquest force was, where their financial center was. And then it was Washington, D.C. and the United States of America. And then we're Team World Police. And then we're subsidizing other countries. And we are creating their economies for them as the American taxpayer, as the money gets laundered out. Changing where the money flow goes from the perspective of the regime is just the cost of doing business. Number 7, acknowledging sensible risk mitigation. Although we want a light touch on AI regulations, President Trump made clear that we do not intend to ignore the risks of this revolutionary technological power. We can monitor risks and secure our edge without stifling innovation. We will prevent our advanced technologies from being misused or stolen by malicious actors. And okay, that's pretty good. No one wants to see innovation stifled. Every time I see that word now, all I can think is we should replace science with innovation. The notion of science, just throw that away, okay? Because the scientific method is practiced in the process of innovation. All right. So the only good thing about the science is already part of innovation. So we actually don't need the neo-Kamabla that is being continuously spun in our direction with pharma money, with military industrial complex money through regime institutions, communicated by regime media outlets. At some point. Number 8, a spirit of optimism and the golden age, the new golden age. Overall, the most striking aspect of the president's speech was the optimism about America reflected throughout it. He reminded America of its proud history as the world's greatest innovator and a mighty engine of prosperity and freedom. This is the nation that invented the light bulb, the telegraph, the computer chip, the smartphone, the GPS, the integrated circuit, and the internet. So says Donald Trump. Americans were the first to fly a plane, first to harness the atom, and first to plant our flag on the moon. We mastered the industrial age, we created the digital age, and now we are leading the world into the golden age. Indeed, the golden age of America. With your help, that golden age will be built by American workers. And we heard the video clip earlier. The quote there goes on. And just for anybody who's only listening to the audio, the David Sachs thread is considerably longer than that. You can go in the info stream, t.me/very reasonable, and look up David Sachs, and that'll be the most recent post. And you should have no problem finding the thread using that exact method. Hello to everyone in the chat, over on Rumble, over on Substack, over on YouTube. There is a Rumble rant from Kank, 1960. $20. Great to be able to catch another live stream. Has anyone seen our old pal APL? Una Panuna. Don't want to ever miss a day. Don't want to ever miss a day of Una. This is Tony Saruga on X, formerly Twitter. And Saruga calls himself an investor, a board member, a big data pioneer, Intel Ops, CIA and NSA contractor / whistleblower, AI implementer, and he just continues going on with titles. He does a lot of interesting work. I don't know what the skinny on this guy is, okay? So take the information with a grain of salt, as I do. He sounds like he is on point all the time and is either running the most plausible disinfo op ever, or he's just uncovering a lot of interesting stuff. So let me pull that post up. Approximately, do you know who you are arguing with on X? And as we just learned earlier, AKA tilting at windmills. Approximately 2 out of 5 profiles say that they are, in the U.S. are not. So 40% of the profiles that say they're in the U.S. aren't in the U.S. How much does that skew public perception? How much does it skew the polls that everyone always posts now? Approximately 82% of all X users are located outside of the United States. That also is very impressive. Chinese state-sponsored actors have evolved to use anonymized infrastructure like virtual private servers, operational relay box networks, and compromised SOHO devices to obfuscate origins, reducing reliance on fixed IP blocks. And if you are a tech-savvy kind of person, you will know what that says. I can merely guess. For example, Tsinghua University infrastructure has been linked to reconnaissance and probing activities supporting CCP economic goals, such as targeting oil gas sectors and Belt and Road Initiative partners. And he keeps going. The Chinese thing, again, okay, but in Good Twin, Evil Twin, that sort of talk doesn't make sense, okay? Even the CCP element of that sort of talk doesn't really make sense, because we are a one-party state here. We have the uniparty, and everyone is either a Democrat or a Republican, or they realize that one of those two things, neither of those two things were suitable, but still want to participate in the political process. And so you're independent, but you're really just going one of the two directions. Hold on for just a moment. Let me pull that Saruga clip or Saruga post back up. There was one more thing that I wanted to mention. Oh, so the Good Twin, Evil Twin thing. doesn't make sense when it comes to talking about countries generally, but it especially doesn't make sense when you're talking about location information, where internet activity was coming from. Okay, because both factions exist in all of these countries. And that means that they have their resources and they probably have their controlled territories as well. California, to the extent that Gavin Newsom is not our boy, and I think it is our boy New, but California functions as a communist state, a proxy of the global regime. That's what the state is. Okay, they don't have real elections there. They don't have a real population there. There's probably 10 or 15 million illegal aliens who are counted in that 40 million Californians. Think about what their political influence on this country is in terms of electoral votes and representatives, knowing that's what they are. Okay, so we have the tech community, or had the tech community in California, in that state. Okay, that's regime control. And we're just supposed to imagine that they don't have that in these other countries. And if they do have that in these other countries, they can route it through their own stuff and make it look like it's coming from anywhere. So what difference does it make that it's in China with the CCP? And again, the only way out to leave that uniparty divide, I think I forgot to say that earlier, the only way out is to really leave. Otherwise, it just bounces back and forth endlessly, which is what we have. Okay. Let us move on to our good friends, our good friends over at Palantir. Wow. And you know what's funny? So I saved the Palantir clip, and I will pull it up in just a moment. But in my rundown, I accidentally pasted in for this Alex Karp video a link to a video of two kittens hugging, okay? And because they don't want to let each other go. And now that I'm saying it, I guess I have to play it. I don't know if this is real, okay? But I hope that it is real. And if it is, it's, I guess, the cutest thing ever or something. A guy wanted to adopt a cat, but he wouldn't leave his brother's side, so he had to take both of them. So saith Rainmaker 1973. That old reliable source. I mean, I guess you have to keep them both. Thank goodness that guy made the right decision. Sometimes you just get lucky, you know? Let's keep going. This is Alex Karp, the CEO of Palantir.
Pretend you're going to build PG. The French government announces they're going to rebuild it for $40 million. You can't rebuild PG for $40 million. You can't rebuild it for $1 billion. You need us. You can't rebuild Foundry. You can't rebuild when we go to market with AIP.
By the way, he's talking about Palantir products. Like Foundry, for instance, is a Palantir product.
The clients are learning two things. They're learning, oh, I could use this. They're learning how to use it. They're also now going to go to every other vendor and say, but I want my thing to provide operational results. And Palantir has done this in 6 hours. I like you better. I'll give you 6 days. I prefer you. Your steak dinner is better. Your suit is better. Your backing from the analyst is better. You don't have the madman sticking up for things that are good and right in the world, despite them being unpopular. And you get all that. I'll give you an extra 10 days. Well, try that with PG. It's ridiculous. Try it with Foundry. It's ridiculous. Try it with Meta Constellation. No one even bothers trying that. No one tries this on Gaia. And they're not going to try it on AIP either. And that's one of the most important things we do as a company. Because in the end, it is actually very attached to our mission. My view of what we should do is build products that are so good that the competition stops competing, whether that's in commercial or on the battlefield. And that's what we're doing. And that's what we're seeing in AIP. And I haven't seen something like this since PG, which was our first anti-terror product. No one bothers even, like currently PG is blocked in Germany. That's because somebody doesn't, whatever. It's like they're waiting for a terror attack so the AfD can win. It's like insane. So any case, no one's bothered saying we should build another PG. You can't build it. So you can just opt to not have the product. There'll be people who do that. And that's the aspiration for every single one of our products. And that's what I see in AIP.
Now, I think that clip is incredibly interesting. It's possible that he's right, and the Palantir products cannot possibly be copied. How would that be, though? Okay, especially with what we know about tech. Well, Palantir is a military contractor. So if these products were all produced by the military and then released publicly by Palantir, that would be a scenario where what he said just made complete and total sense. You can't copy this thing because that's how well protected it is in a, cyber defense, in its cyber defense capabilities. So, man, interesting clip. I can't tell you that I know what that means because I'm not familiar with all of the Palantir suite of software products. Okay. But understanding that these things are used for tracking, for drone warfare, who knows? And AI, obviously, I can't even imagine how many like Palantir articles we've talked about over the last 3 or 4 years, all of the different avenues that they go down, all the different products that they have. If it's impossible to copy them, there has to be a reason why. He seems like he's saying it's because they're just so good. That's the surface level interpretation and the easy assumption. And it may well be correct. Okay. But I think it's also possible that he's saying something else there. And if they really, really can't be copied, I have to think that it's because they are so well protected and not because everyone at Palantir is just the highest level super genius that ever existed. Okay, let's continue. I just wanted to mention this briefly. So tonight on Badlands Story Hour, Burning Bright and I are going to be talking about the movie Thank You for Smoking. Okay, and if you want to watch, it's at 9 p.m. Eastern. The movie Thank You for Smoking, as I was starting it the other night, because I always will watch the movie of the week every Sunday night. That's kind of the routine. And so as the movie's starting, it's going through the intro where it lists the cast members and the music supervisor and the producers, okay, and everybody else involved in the production. Elon Musk and Peter Thiel are producers of the movie Thank You for Smoking. I did not know that, and that just surprised the hell out of me the other night. I was like, what? Peter Thiel and Elon Musk have together produced a movie before? And of course, that's after just on Friday talking about Palantir getting into the movie and scripted content business. Also worth remembering. I mean, man, I was saying last night on Ghost of Base Patrick Henry's show that Palantir, gosh, what did I was just going to go down another road. I'm so pissed at myself right now. Elon Musk and Peter Thiel. Oh, yes. Palantir, the film and television venture they were going to have the other night. I've started writing about the Party of False Decorum and about a lot of, the stuff that we talk about on this show. And hold on one second. I want to see if I can pull something up on this. Hold for processing. Anyhow, okay, got it. So in the course of writing, I'm thinking about how the television is referred to, we used to hear it referred to much more often as programming. and that we are just essentially sitting there and participating in the programming, our own programming. And we are shown the incentives on television that we are able to earn if we properly indoctrinate ourselves with the programming and then spread it and help the programming settle into everyone. Okay. And then eventually the programming stops working, which is the cycle that we're in right now, which is why they have all of this new kind of content coming out. They're like, oh, we can see that you no longer like that kind of programming that we were showing you. Here is some different programming. I think you'll like all of this better. Just stay programmed and we'll be back here taking care of everything. Okay. I mean, that's really what it is that we're watching incoming through the screen every day. It's mind-boggling. Okay. This is TechCrunch. Okay. Pull up. Here we are. I don't know if this is Allianz or Allianz, but Allianz Life says, well, now it sounds like I'm talking about a Lion's Life. Allianz Life says majority of customers' personal data stolen in cyber attack. U.S. insurance giant Allianz Life or Allianz Life has confirmed to TechCrunch that hackers stole the personal information of a majority of its customers, financial professionals, and employees during a mid-July data breach. When reached by TechCrunch, Allianz Life spokesperson Brett Weinberg confirmed the breach, saying, on July 16th, 2025, a malicious threat actor gained access to a third-party cloud-based CRM system used by Allianz Life, referring to a customer relationship management database containing information on its customers. The threat actor was able to obtain personally identifiable data related to the majority of Allianz Life customers, financial professionals, and select Allianz Life employees using a social engineering technique. So just companies having all of their data breached. We hear about a new data breach basically every week. Last week, we heard about this one, and now we are hearing about it the second time. And this is 404, I think it's called 404 Media. It's a tech blog. A second T breach reveals users' DMs about abortions and cheating. A second major security issue with women's dating safety app T has exposed much more user data than the first breach we reported last week, with an independent security researcher now finding it was possible for hackers to access messages between users discussing abortions, cheating partners, and phone numbers they sent to one another. Despite T's initial statement that the incident involved a legacy data storage system containing information from over 2 years ago, the second issue impacting a separate database is much more recent, affecting messages up until last week, according to the researchers' findings that 404 Media verified. The researcher said they also found the ability to send a push notification to all of T's users. That's crazy. It's hard to overstate how sensitive this data is and how it could put T's users at risk if it fell into the wrong hands. When signing up, T encourages users to choose an anonymous screen name, but it was trivial for 404 Media to find the real-world identities of some users given the nature of their messages, which T has led them to believe were private. Users could be easily found via their social media handles, phone numbers, and real names that they shared in these chats. These conversations also frequently make damning accusations against people who are named in the private messages, and in some cases are easy to identify. And so the article goes on, and I do think that this is an issue worth staying well attuned to. But I guess we have basically an app where women talk about the intimate details of their personal lives in a way that reviews men and warns all the other women not to ever be around that man. Don't date that man. Don't do anything. Now, telling your personal friend about having a bad date with a guy and being like, I don't think you want to go out with that guy. Totally normal. Okay. It would be insane if there's anybody who has never had that interaction. But taking taking a story about someone told from your perspective, putting it online as the objective truth under the assumption that no one's ever going to know you did it because the site tells you that, oh, your privacy is guaranteed. Don't worry about it. Think about what people put on there. There used to be a women's group in Los Angeles on Facebook. Good Morning America even covered it. It was called Girls Night Out, I think. Okay. And they did this kind of thing on there. They would make up, not all made up. I'm sure that some of them were very real stories, and people, men and women, do regrettable things in Hollywood. Okay. So I'm not blaming all of these people, but this was a prominent thing on there. And some of the stories were verifiably made up. Okay. So they were communicating, letting everyone know, don't go near that guy. That guy's a douchebag. This guy is bad at sex. It was legitimately like that. And I know that because I had little, what do you call them? Sparrows in that community who would tweet and tell me exactly what's going on, because I knew a zillion people. And of course I knew many of the people in that group. Everybody should do whatever the hell they want. Okay. That's how you measure your worth as a person. If participating in an app like this seems like a good thing to be doing, I'd say you have a pretty dark life. Okay. The idea that you are going to protect all other women from a man you had a bad experience with, well, that's a noble thing if the experience was true. If the experience is exaggerated in any way, that's not noble at all. That's you being hurt and insecure and running online because you want moral support about the guy that didn't like you enough. Okay. And so it's a real fine line on that. But that said, the amount of compromising information that could get shared on an app like that about the men, and then all that data is breached, well, what's that going to be used for? Okay. Because maybe, by the way, maybe this is just a good thing that this data is breached so that that app stops functioning, so that women no longer go on there, because it's not a safe space for them to make these claims about people, thinking that they can destroy someone's life or harm someone's life and that they'll never know, no one will ever know. That is really vengeful and vindictive. And again, maybe there are scenarios where that motivation would be rationalizable, but there's also a bunch that don't. Okay. And so you think about apps like this, dating apps in particular, and you think about all the data and information that goes into those exchanges. Well, all of that is in the great cloud in the sky. Wherever all your data is, that's there too. Okay. And I know that there's going to be things someday that come out that I'm not proud I said or did, because I was hopefully a different person back then. Okay. That's just how life goes. But we have to understand that all this data is out there and people are going to release it. And you said something bad about someone close to you. Well, you're going to have to own up to it, right? You used to have this or that vice or proclivity. You're going to have to own up to it. All of these things are going to come out. The data is just going to keep getting breached. And we've talked about this before, because this is one of the very few regime existential threats that I think could actually be realized. Okay. But it doesn't have to be an existential threat. If they released access to everybody's data all at once. Okay. And I'm not saying this is going to happen. It seems like it's happening in stepwise fashion over the course of these last few years. But that could happen all at once. And if that happened, the societal destabilization is going to depend on whether or not people are able to take account for what they have actually done. Okay. You have to like have gotten right with God to face a situation like that head on. And this is something that I've been thinking about for years, talking about on the show for years, and applying to myself. Again, like I have to be perfectly comfortable with everyone hearing a perspective on the worst things I did in my life. Okay. And that's just, it comes with the territory. So it's fine. And the truth is, I'm not accepting judgment from people who donned a mask and tried to tell everyone I was crazy. Like, it just doesn't matter to me, right? They can try to embarrass me, but at the end of the day, that's not who I'm judged by. This dynamic is going to keep expanding. And I would encourage anyone who has not gone through that process or thought about that process to think about that process real hard, okay? Because this sort of thing, I think, is going to become far more prevalent. Now, who knows? Maybe they already have cyber defenses in place to make sure something like that can't happen, okay? Maybe they were able to remove that data set completely from the regime access. Totally possible. That's a theory we've talked about since early 2022 when Twitter was handed over to Elon Musk. And oh, yes, he bought the greatest information weapon in the history of the world for $44 billion from billionaires who use it to control the world. That didn't happen. Okay. So if the access to all that data is restricted and there is some agreement worldwide that that is going to be held in, if that's the ultimate like nuclear weapon, quote unquote, okay, well then maybe this could be averted, but otherwise it's going to happen. And either way, it's important in our lives to get to the place where we can accept something like that happening and knowing that our self-worth and that our approval from our loved ones doesn't hinge on something stupid or distasteful that we did a decade ago. Okay. So I don't know. I just thought I saw these two stories over the weekend or I saw the T1 last week and then this data breach over the weekend. And this is all I think now when I think those things. And the Saruga thing, you got to add that in there too, because often these companies will say that they were hacked. I'm not entirely certain that's true because their product ultimately is that data. And so they sell that data and they allow other companies to access that data. And when we agree to our app permissions, we agree to give them that data as well and allow them to share that data and monetize that data. So they're all doing that. All right. It's right out in the open. What are they going to use it for? It had to be in that grand scope of everything. And if access to that can be restricted and has been restricted from the uniparty government, the uniparty establishment, okay, bankers, academics, whatever it is, whatever old guard institutions need protecting, you would have thought at some point they had access to that and they were using it to move markets and overthrow governments, etc., because they were able to access all that data and in the aggregate know how to manipulate people. Okay. So that's what the weapon is. And I think this stuff is going to become more prevalent. I don't know that that's true. All right. All we got to do is get right with God, though. That's all you have to do. And it's an important part of the growth process. I can't imagine if I hadn't had to go through that over the last few years and really look back into things that I would regret and like come to terms with things that I did thinking that I was on top of the world, you know? So false reality. It's what it is, man. You do things you think will be good because there's just worldly interests in mind. Okay. It's not the inclination to do the godly moral thing all the time. You're focused on worldly goals. And so it's real easy to do things you think are good in a worldly sense that through the inversion are just obviously really bad things that a good person shouldn't and wouldn't do. But yet you did it because you think it was worthwhile. I've done it countless times. Okay. And at some point, I hope that I understand that I am saved through God's grace, but I also hope that the people around me will value me enough and be honest and open and caring enough to understand that it could be them in the future, because that's really what this is. This is, and it's easy to dunk on the militant feminists who hate men and want to go after them. But that stuff's coming to everybody. Okay. Let's change directions and we will move away from technology and refocus on media. Donald Trump has been going off over the weekend. He said on Truth Social, wow, Comcast's NBC is down in viewership almost 28% this year. Their programming is terrible. Their management even worse. They are an arm of the Democrat Party and should be held accountable for that. Likewise, fake news ABC, MAGA. And so we've been talking about the Paramount and CBS merger with Skydance and the influence on all of that. We've talked about Donald Trump going after 60 Minutes, Donald Trump going after George Stephanopoulos at ABC. Now he's going after NBC. We know he's got the lawsuit open against Fox and Murdoch. So he's going after the 4 television networks, and 2 of them have already settled and come to terms, basically. One of them, and both of them, of course, are being, the reasons for that are being obscured in the press with these cover stories. But underneath that, all of these networks were participants in these crimes against America, and they must be held accountable for that. And so these are hopefully steps in that direction, or signals suggesting that things are moving in that direction. He also said, both of these were on Saturday, networks aren't allowed to be political pawns for the Democrat Party. It has become so outrageous that, in my opinion, their licenses could and should be revoked. Now, most people will hear that and they'll be like, okay, yeah, but like not Fox, not The Blaze, and not like these other like normie podcasts and kind of based in red-pilled bros who are Trump sometimes. Just the Democrats. He's just talking about the Democrats. Listen to this if I just read Uniparty instead. Networks aren't allowed to be political pawns for the Uniparty. It has become so outrageous that, in my opinion, their licenses could and should be revoked. MAGA. Okay. What are the networks? ABC, CBS, NBC, and Fox News. But they're still the mainstream media, and they are telling us daily about reality. And they are not just pitching psyops at us all the time. Except that's exactly what they're doing. And Trump has called them out for doing that before. And hopefully now we will see them held accountable, maybe as part of Rico Grande that we are going to discuss later. So Trump dropped those 2 posts Saturday in the evening. And then he dropped this one. Hold for processing. I'm looking at the large amount of money owed by the Democrats after the presidential election and the fact that they admit to paying, probably illegally, $11 million to singer Beyonce for an endorsement. She never sang not one note, and left the stage to a booing and angry audience. That is true. $3 million for quote unquote expenses to Oprah, $600,000 to very low rated TV anchor Al Sharpton, a total lightweight, and others to be named for doing absolutely nothing. These ridiculous fees were incorrectly stated in the books and records. You were not allowed to pay for an endorsement. It is totally illegal to do so. Can you imagine what would happen if politicians started paying for people to endorse them? All hell would break out. Kamala and all of those that receive endorsement money broke the law. They should all be prosecuted. Thank you for your attention to this matter. Okay. Now, this claim, this is not the first time Trump has mentioned this, first of all, but this claim has been fact-checked. And don't you worry, it's fact-checked by CNN. So you know it's the most mainstream news channel. I think CNN is the most mainstream news channel. I've never said it that way, but I've thought it, because they are like the one that pretends to be in the middle. And so they'll try to make it really agreeable to both sides so that whenever they have a panel on TV, there are people representing every viewpoint. Like that's what Scott, what's his name, does on CNN now. The guy that's Scott Jennings, I think is his name, going to run for Mitch McConnell's Senate seat in Kentucky. He is on there to make MAGA friendly people think that CNN is worth watching while they just yap the truth of the underlying story. Okay. Scott Jennings agrees to participate in the truth of the underlying story, the underlying argument, as do the rest of the people on the panel. And this one person represents the brand we affiliate with. So we assume that the other people are doing exactly the same thing for different people. We're glad that we have our guy. And along with all of them, we accept the truth of the underlying story or the validity of the underlying argument. But that's not what it is. It is a multifaceted, staged, scripted, televised argument that is meant to find something that appeals to every kind of viewer. That's what we're watching on CNN. That's why I think that they are the most mainstream news channel. Okay. MSNBC has a clear target audience, retarded people. Fox News has a clear target audience, retarded people. CNN has a real clear audience, retarded people who want to seem like they're not the other retards. Whew. All right, so let's get to CNN's fact check. Oh, we're having a good time today. Oh, man. Okay, let me just check the chats quickly because I have not in some time. And I don't want to be negligent. There's one thing you don't want to be in this business. It's negligent. This business. I don't know what this business is. Here we are. Substack, I hope you guys are all doing well. Everybody in Rumble seems to be chilling. And so we are just going to get back into this. Okay. So, fact check. Trump calls to prosecute Beyonce based on a non-existent $11 million payment. This courtesy of CNN's fact checker extraordinaire, Daniel Dale. And I'm sorry, this is just how the archived post looks. I don't know why it saved the shaded thing that you know, on the normal website, you would just click that off. CNN articles have started popping up like this now. And it's annoying to me because this is what I use them for, but whatever, they're allowed to do it. Okay. So federal campaign spending records show a $165,000 payment from the Harris campaign to Beyonce's production company, which the campaign listed as a campaign event production expense. A Harris campaign spokesperson told Deadline last year that they didn't pay celebrity endorsers, but were required by law to cover the costs connected to their experiences. And you think, oh, well, that makes sense. Okay. They have to pay for these people to come so that they are, at least it has to be neutral so that it doesn't look like you're doing something untoward and receiving value without paying for it in some sense. You can't do that in elections. So the event production aspect makes it look like Beyonce is doing all of this of her own accord. We've got you taken care of, your arrival, all of your logistics are set up. That's what the $165,000 payment is for. It's going to be so difficult to put on this Kamala Harris concert event at an arena. We're going to need $165,000 from the Beyonce end for our logistics, our personal logistics. I really highly doubt that. But what this does, this payment, is give fact checkers like this an easy out. Okay, there might have been a payment to Beyonce from the Kamala campaign, but it was all done above board and none of it was for her appearance fee. Beyonce makes appearance fees on like waking up in the morning, okay? When she posts on Instagram about a product or something she's interested in, there is an almost 100% chance that she is getting paid to do that. So if she's posting online and getting paid to post about politics and various causes online, all of which absolutely happens. I used to work for a social media management company. I know exactly how this works. Okay. So she gets appearance fees for taking a picture of herself or probably employing someone to take that picture, hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not millions, whenever she does that. And she's not taking a dime for Kamala Harris because she knows how important it is to elect Kamala Harris in a fake election that Kamala Harris never had any chance of winning. Highly doubt that. She's doing it of her own accord. That's what we're supposed to believe. Regardless of the merits of this particular $165,000 expenditure, it's far from an $11 million one. Okay. So the difference between this number and $11 million means that it's not happening. See, because this is like 1%, 1 to 2% of the $11 million. That means 98% of this isn't true, which means the whole thing isn't true. Fact checkers actually go through that process, and that thought process makes sense to someone who is still in the upside down, right? Standard issue villagers still remaining. If you are still totally indoctrinated into this thing, you think, oh, yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I mean, $11 million, $165,000 for production expenses. That's the story's totally wrong, and you just dismiss it. And that is what people like this hope to accomplish when writing these fact checks. Okay. Nobody ever produced any evidence for the claim of an 8-figure endorsement payment to Beyonce since the claim that it was $10 million began spreading last year among Trump supporters on social media. Fact check websites looked into the $10 million claim during the campaign and did not find any basis for it. And so we are supposed to understand that these other fact check sites, these serious fact check sites, have looked into all of this. There's no evidence. So this is a baseless claim. Beyonce Knowles' mom, Tina Knowles, said false information on Instagram when in fact Beyonce did not receive a penny for speaking at a presidential candidate, Vice President Kamala Harris's rally in Houston. Okay. And so Dale goes on in this fact check with this as the justification that Trump is lying to the American people. Beyonce's mom says that payment never happened. Therefore, it never happened. And we're all supposed to accept that. And we're supposed to believe that Trump definitely doesn't have access to information exactly like that. And of course he would, because he's the commander-in-chief of the U.S. military and the plenary authority over the intelligence community. Okay. So unless all of that is regime controlled, military and intelligence, and I really don't think it is, then he would have access to something like that. Crimes committed by his political opponent, he would have access to information about that. So why would it matter what Beyonce's mom says? Now, you might say Beyonce's mom has access to that information too. She asked Beyonce, and Beyonce said, "No, Mom, that's not true. It was just this $165,000 payment, like my manager Phil told me to say." If there was a payment of $11 million or $10 million or whatever it was to Beyonce, it would have been through back channels. And the justification, the connection for that payment, none of that would have occurred. Okay. By the way, we're talking about the people who always tell us that Bitcoin can be used for these black market transactions. Well, okay, if that's true, then who knows what Beyonce's wallet might have received from some other wallet associated with the Kamala Harris campaign. Well, certain people might know that, and Donald Trump would be the person with access to information like that. So the idea that we should just take their word for it because Trump hasn't yet produced public evidence, madness. There's one other paragraph in here that I found very interesting. Or two others, sorry. Democrat officials actually reject the claim of an $11 million payment. They actually reject it? Okay. The White House did not immediately respond to CNN's request for any evidence of a Democrat admission of such a payment. So CNN requested information, evidence, quote unquote, from the Trump team about that shows a Democrat admitting to the payment. So if Trump has evidence, it can only be this kind of evidence, and he has to produce it, an admission from a Democrat that they made that payment. So the only way we'll accept Trump's claim as true is if the Democrats admit something that they would be guilty for. We want the regime to admit their own guilt before we'll believe it, because no, they said, no, that didn't happen, and you haven't been shown evidence. Okay, well, we haven't been shown evidence. We can admit that. We can believe that. But Donald Trump is right an awful lot about these things. He gets called a conspiracy theorist for saying. And I would expect that he would be right about this one too. So baseless claims, no evidence, that's supposed to turn us away from this claim. Let it all go. Don't assume that Beyonce and Jay-Z were paid by Obama in 2008 and 2012 and paid by Hillary Clinton in 2016, because the Obamas, Beyonce, and Jay-Z all appeared in Chicago, I think, at Hillary's last rally in 2016 before the election. It was like a day or two before the election. How far back does this go? It's going to be really interesting to find these things out, but let me finish this out. Trump went on to criticize other payments from the Harris campaign to organizations connected to prominent endorsers. He asserted without evidence that these payments were inaccurately described in spending records, and he wrongly asserted that it is totally illegal to pay for political endorsements, though no federal law forbids endorsement payments. Okay, so Trump is wrong about the law, according to Daniel Dale. There's nothing else Trump could be talking about as the chief law enforcement officer of the country, other than some federal law that Daniel Dale will admit actually makes this sort of thing illegal. Okay. And here's the thing. The actuals in this story don't matter. This story is out there now, and people know about this story. If there is any proof produced in the future, everyone's going to believe this story 100%, and the whole thing blows up in their faces. This would be a very bad look for them for obvious reasons in terms of what their actual popularity is. But this is just part of the hoodwinking. Okay. The celebrities are going to do what they are told to do by the more powerful people in their industry and by people they want to impress so that they can get more social credits and fiat tokens online, go on more vacations, and buy more houses. Okay? That's how it actually works. So the idea that there's no possibility for a payment from the uniparty to these people, even though the uniparty is part of the power structure over these people, come on. This isn't, by the way, just to be clear, this isn't a factual claim that Trump is definitely right, and therefore we should abandon our rationality and just believe it because he said it. Okay? That's not what I'm saying. We should still vet these claims. We should keep them as information among other information. When we see that this information is damaging and they handle it with a fact check like that, we should pay more heed to that so-called conspiracy theorist, because the chance that that thing is going to end up true while Daniel Dale is fact checking it is probably almost 100% at this point. All right. Man, oh man, we are still in the intro. Oh gosh, we're never going to get through all of it. It's impossible. And I wish, that I could devote more time to doing this stuff, because there is a lot happening, and so that we could go through all of it. But again, I don't know that all of it that happens day to day to day is worth covering every day. Okay. The only way I see this stuff to be worth covering is by taking the big picture approach to it and trying to figure out what all of this collectively means and how we should respond to it and how we should think about it. Okay. But as for updating the news cycle, I mean, there's no way I'm going to talk about this shooting psyop that happened in New York last night. And I'm not saying nobody's dead, but it's still a psyop. And it's being handled like a psyop. Now the NFL is in it. Oh, it's about CTE. This guy had traumatic brain injuries from football, right? His football summer camp, training camp is starting up, okay? Just started up last week. NFL begins in 5 weeks. CTE becomes front of mind for everyone. Oh, that's what made that psycho killer go crazy in that Manhattan building. That's what it was. Oh, you bad NFL. In a PR sense, this is a hit on the NFL. This is a takedown attempt on the NFL. Small chance there is some NFL complicity in participation, but I haven't figured out a justification for that, so I doubt that that's true. It seems like a targeted hit on the NFL, and it could be because we're about to see the Washington Commanders become the Washington Redskins once again. And to give that information to the public so they can all go crazy about race stuff and then have this, oh yeah, the NFL is terrible because of CTE thing too. That seems like a cohesive narrative that plays out over the course of weeks, step by step, so that each element of that narrative is fully consumed, and it is our new slogans, the people in the mainstream. These are the new things we're going to repeat about the NFL, about CTE, about the Washington Redskins, etc. Okay, so I would look for it to go in that direction. We shall see. Okay, we're going to move on from Daniel Dale and the fact checks in the entertainment and technology portion of our show. And now I'm going to share for you, or with you, I should say, the best tweet ever. Now, I don't know if this is absolutely the best tweet ever, but this is a 10 out of 10 tweet. This might be an 11 out of 10 tweet. So the poster, who goes by Young Macro, okay, it's at APRALKY. And I will go through that to give this guy a shout out. That's how good this tweet is. I don't even like saying shout out. Gosh, I wish I hadn't said that. There should be no record of me ever saying shout out. So this is this picture that he's posting here is from the Financial Times, and you would have to recognize the background of their website to understand that this is absolutely the Financial Times, and then also the subject matter, of course. So they had a headline from, I don't know, I think maybe this was a couple of months ago. Donald Trump reaps $50 billion tariff haul as this might be more recent than that, but Donald Trump reaps $50 billion tariff haul as world chickens out. Okay, so this is one of the Financial Times's freak out articles about how Trump's tariff thing is actually sort of working out in ways they said it was never going to work out. So this tweeter responds, I'm generally a staunch defender of the economics profession, but the fact that an 80-year-old reality show star and his ragtag crew of like 5 Alabama University undergrads are running circles around 10,000 PhDs for a year now does raise some questions one cannot ignore. That is an 11 out of 10. That is a perfect tweet. You can't do it any better than that. A great point he's making. Okay. So we have these experts telling us how the future is going to go based on whatever stories they're telling at the time. And their speculation about the future is entirely dependent on those stories, even though those stories are fake, and they should know that. Okay. So I'm not saying all news is fake. I'm not saying everything that happens in the world is fake. But if you are basing your speculation and your outlook on fake news about Donald Trump to make the argument that Donald Trump is going to fail, then you are relying on the worst possible information. Okay. So you're going to be wrong all the time. And Donald Trump, he calls him an 80-year-old reality show star with a ragtag crew of 5 Alabama University undergrads doing all this work. They are running circles around all of the world's expert economists. These are the same sorts of people that we trusted for their epidemiology outlooks back in 2020. 2.4 million people were going to die from the coronavirus. Even just talk about how absurd that number was helped them cement the truth of the underlying narrative. And that's something that I still did back then. I was like, I knew that one thing was wrong, but I didn't know that the underlying thing was wrong too. I just knew what was being pushed to everyone was wrong. So it was easy to fall back into that controlled opposition dynamic grouping, because you think that the other side must be right. And then you learn, well, no, both of these sides are participating in the same lie. So I need to find a position outside that from which to observe this, understanding what they're attempting to do. Okay. So the experts have failed totally. They fail on the trade stuff. They fail on the economy stuff. Chris Matthews was saying at the beginning of the show, the people are not believing them. The people are going in this other direction, and they keep doing it, and they keep doubling down on everything Donald Trump does. It's the worst thing that could have been done somehow, and they never really quite explain fully how. Okay, let's continue. So let's stick with the economic issues for just a second. This is Scott Bessent.
He's created a lot of leverage because he's created an A-B situation. He is able to go to the trading partners and say, look, I am happy to take in this tariff income if you don't want to negotiate. This is a high rate, but the U.S. is taking in massive amounts of tariff income. We had the first June budget surplus since 2015 last month. We reported it this month. And so we are taking in substantial income. So President Trump is creating this leverage by saying, if you don't want to negotiate with me, I've sent you a letter with a high rate. Have at the high rate, or come and negotiate in better fashion. Because I'll tell you, what was fascinating for me, and this was President Trump at his best, was the Indonesians came with what I thought was a very good offer out of the blocks. President Trump kept pushing them. He raised the reciprocal rate when he sent them the letter, and 5 iterations later, the Indonesian trade deal was greatly improved, turned into a great deal for both sides.
So a budget surplus, according to the Secretary of the Treasury. He's also talking about Trump's leverage in those deals. He makes deal after deal after deal after deal with big nation, big block of nations. We'll talk about the European Union in a little bit. He's making all these deals because he has that leverage, and he's winning in every single one of those scenarios. It is total domination. Okay. It's not just half the country seems to like this guy and they're not going away. It's total domination on that end of things. What end is it not total domination on? I would suggest the general public's end. Okay. The general public is not to the point where they understand what's going on, or I don't think anywhere close to it, to be honest. And people have gone from one side of the controlled opposition to the other, and we are conditioned to believe that that is like the most possible progress anyone can ever imagine. The point of all this being, of course, to make sure that people with R's next to their name rather than D's next to their name get elected in fake elections and then get to make laws that govern our behavior. We are in a strange place. Let us keep going. Let's get into some of the Jeffrey Epstein stuff. Every newscast and podcast is about this Jeffrey Epstein Files issue. The Jeffrey Epstein Files hoax, as it were. This is Axios from yesterday. Ghislaine Maxwell files Supreme Court brief appealing Epstein conviction. Now oh man, I knew I was going to do this. Okay, hold on one second. I brought up the main site version and not the archived version. Here is the archived version. Ghislaine Maxwell pressed ahead with an appeal to the Supreme Court on Monday, seeking to overturn her conviction on the grounds that she was unlawfully prosecuted for sex trafficking minors with Jeffrey Epstein. The filing by Maxwell, who was sentenced to 20 years in federal prison in 2022, comes just 3 days after she met with a top Justice Department official tapped to re-examine the Epstein case. The Trump administration has faced weeks of bipartisan backlash after reneging on promises to release all files related to the now deceased sex trafficker. MAGA activists have suggested that Maxwell, a British former socialite, could be the key to exposing new information about the alleged elite pedophile ring at the heart of Epstein conspiracy theories. Yes, that is actually quite fair from the perspective of Axios. Maxwell's appeal revolves around a highly controversial 2007 plea agreement Epstein negotiated with the U.S. Attorney's Office in the Southern District of Florida. The United States, the plea agreement stated, agrees that it will not institute any criminal charges against any potential co-conspirators of Epstein, including but not limited to 4 other suspects. Maxwell was not listed as one of those suspects, but her lawyers argue that she didn't need to be. And so we will see how that situation plays out. But I would suggest that that is probably going to play out in Ghislaine Maxwell's favor. And that would maybe, it's starting to seem, be pretty appropriate. Okay. If she is granted some kind of clemency or pardon, and Trump hasn't ruled it out to this point, maybe that happens. Maybe she's turning in 100 people. And then it's a moral issue for all of us, whether or not it's acceptable to let someone like that go in exchange for that kind of information and the change that will be made in the future. Okay. But that's only if the worst possible things about her are actually true. If they happen not to be true, and we don't know they're true because we don't have the files, well, then we're in another game. Okay. And then it kind of matters more that Ghislaine Maxwell was arrested in a secluded mansion where she was staying in New Hampshire. Was she in witness protection? I mean, there's no way to substantiate that online, but a secluded New York mansion, it was purchased in cash by an unknown person. Could be. And so you have that whole Ghislaine Maxwell is going to prison narrative during the fake and illegitimate campaign of Joe Biden. And now it seems like the implications of that case and that Joe Biden effort can all be potentially unwound really soon. Did anyone see that coming? If it is unwound, this thing is going to go off in a different direction. It seems to be shaping up for that. Okay. This is like the auto pen. Joe Biden was never president. The auto pen is a story layer that explains to the public why it's true and right that Joe Biden wasn't president without saying, oh yeah, it's also actually true that Joe Biden wasn't president, because that's not the sort of thing that they would want to admit. Okay. We are in a very similar situation here with a cover story to explain to the general public something else that must happen, which is the Ghislaine gets let go op. Okay. That would be the end of that op. Her storyline would at that point be closed. Now, people might still keep after her because they are convinced that she has done something, and maybe that is entirely justified. I don't know. But in terms of the central narrative on that, at some point, that's going to wrap up, and it's probably going to be in that way. Everything is shifting in that direction right now. And the whole Epstein Files thing and all these secrets that people thought were going to come out, that's just going by the wayside at this point. This is a grand psyop that is being unwound before our eyes. And I don't know which direction that psyop goes in. Okay. I just know that's not a rug I'm going to stand on and emotionally invest in. If it somehow happens that Trump is implicated, I don't believe that's possible. But if it somehow happens that he is, well, we're still just going to move on in the same direction we were going, just not with Trump. Okay. And again, I don't think that there's any chance that he is in any danger whatsoever of being quote unquote outed for something bad that he did. He doesn't act like he's in any danger, and he knows. Okay. He knows whether or not he did something regrettable with Jeffrey Epstein. He sure isn't acting like he did. Let's keep going. So Maxwell has also apparently asked for some kind of formal immunity when she appears in Congress. Will that happen? I don't know. Will they give her that sort of immunity? Maybe, probably. And then we would have a Ghislaine Maxwell tells the public what really happened television show. And all of that would be sworn the same way that her testimony to Todd Blanche would have been sworn. So she can't lie in the congressional hearing about the thing that she said in the DOJ meeting. Those things are going to have to match up. How's it going to go? This is former Trump impeachment attorney David Schoen on Friday. This is actually The Hill reprinted on Yahoo News. Former Epstein lawyer says Bondi jumped the gun a bit on files. David Schoen, a former lawyer for Donald Trump and Jeffrey Epstein, said Attorney General Pam Bondi and other officials jumped the gun a bit in overhyping the Epstein files. Now, we know that Pam Bondi did that. Is that for the sake of the op? Potentially, because she's apparently the one that made all those clownish influencers look like total grifters and sellouts as they perform that humiliation ritual at the White House. So Pam Bondi definitely has done that. Schoen, in an interview with BBC Newsnight Thursday, said there is no Epstein client list that would highlight connections between the disgraced financier and wealthy individuals. If someone were to think that there's actually a list which Jeffrey Epstein wrote down the name of, you fill in the name of the famous wealthy person with some young girl, that just doesn't exist. And again, he's in a position to know. Now, you can say that he might be corrupt or might have other interests, and he's just peddling the story to the public, and that's fine. That could be true. All right, that pattern fits our reality. That could be true. David Schoen could be a bad guy, but also he defended Trump in the impeachment television show that we saw right after Trump left the presidency. And we'll get back to that in just a second as well. Actually, you know what? We are right there for that. So Trump was asked on Friday about Obama and whether Obama would have immunity under the Supreme Court decision last year, the same immunity that Trump had and that the Supreme Court agreed he had in response to the Jack Smith fake indictments. Okay. So they went to the Supreme Court. John and I went through some of this argument on Saturday evening's Devolution Power Hour. So I would suggest if you want extended conversation on that particular aspect, go ahead and watch that over there. But Trump admitted that Obama might potentially have some sort of immunity by the same token and same standards. And that might play into what we're hearing right now from a John Ratcliffe or a John Solomon, et cetera. These people who are filling us in and reaching the normie layer on some of these stories about corruption and whatnot. So if Obama is involved, for instance, in talking to his intelligence community and weighing in on what he believes the intelligence shows, that's a president operating in the course of his duties. Okay. And it's a political decision whether or not you're okay with that and what he did and the manner in which he did it. But that requires a political solution, which would be to impeach the president were he the president. But we always assume that Obama couldn't possibly be impeached now because he's not president anymore. And other people have been president. Except that's what they did to Donald Trump. Why did they do that to Donald Trump? Why did we see that second fake impeachment hoax? Maybe for this, because the piercing of that veil of immunity that the president does rightfully have in office can happen through the impeachment process. And once the impeachment process happens, if he's impeached, well, that kind of takes away your presidential immunity, I would think. So that is an interesting strategy. I mentioned the possibility of Obama getting impeached on Saturday night. And that's something people in the truth community have talked about. I think there used to be a hashtag impeach44. Okay, that's Barack Obama. So this isn't something that I've come up with. This has been floating around the truth community for kind of a long time. That sort of thing seems like it's plausible now. And here is David Schoen.
He was right when he said the immunity decision would help President Obama. But you know what it doesn't help him with? Impeachment. According to the Democratic Party and the House managers in the second impeachment trial, a former president, once out of office, is still subject to impeachment. In other words, they've argued Lincoln could be impeached, George Washington impeached, and certainly, as I predicted at the time, this would come back, they would rue the day, because President Obama could be impeached if this evidence really says what it says. And that it could also strip him of the immunity, because under Article 1, Section 3, Clause 7 of the Constitution, the Democrats argued it bars one from holding further office, and the language itself says you're still subject to criminal prosecution or indictment. So we'll see how that plays out.
So he knows better than I do. And I would expect that he is probably right about that. He also worked on that very impeachment hoax. Pretty reliable sources, I would suggest. These are the sort of people we should agree with despite evidence, because their story is entirely plausible, entirely rational, and entirely aligned with their motivations. And I don't know what more level of agreement we need to find with people. Okay. I mean, again, you're running a risk believing that something is definitely true, but through the mouth of someone else, that comes from the mouth of someone else, but believing that it is quite possibly true and maybe likely true because of that source, that is not the same kind of cognitive error at all. Okay, this is Donald Trump over the weekend addressing the Epstein thing, because he's overseas taking care of important business, and he is still having to respond to the Jeffrey Epstein thing.
I'm glad I did, if you want to know the truth. And by the way, I never went to the island, and Bill Clinton went there supposedly 28 times. I never went to the island, but Larry Summers, I hear, went there. He was the head of Harvard. And many other people that are very big people. Nobody ever talks about them. I never had the privilege of going to his island. And I did turn it down, but a lot of people in Palm Beach were invited to his island. In one of my very good moments, I turned it down. I didn't want to go to his island. Yeah.
He's saying it. Believe it or disbelieve it. Does he seem like he's worried about what's in the Epstein Files hoax? He's let us know it's a hoax. All they're going to be able to say is that Trump was lying. Our information is real. Why would anyone believe that? He's like already clear of this. As I said a couple of weeks ago, we talked about it last week. Kankan and I had that discussion. He said that he didn't think we were out of the woods. We were out of the woods. Okay. Once people will not believe a story, period, you're out of the woods. That psyop can never be used against you. And that's where we are. Hold for processing. Here we are. One more from Trump. This is,
we think some of the workers that were,
sorry, to be clear, this is audio from aboard Air Force One this morning.
It is pretty soon. We think pretty soon. Mr. President, Epstein has a certain reputation, obviously. I'm just curious, were some of the workers that were taken from you, were some of them young women?
Were some of them
young women?
Well, I don't want to say, but everyone knows the people that were taken. And it was the concept of taking people that work for me is bad. But that story's been pretty well out there. And the answer is yes, they were.
Yes, they were young women? What did they do?
In the spa.
In the spa?
Yeah, people that work in the spa. I have a great spa, one of the best spas in the world at Mar-a-Lago. And people were taken out of the spa, hired by him. In other words, gone. And other people would come and complain, this guy is taking people from the spa. I didn't know that. And then when I heard about it, I told him, I said, listen, we don't want you taking our people, whether it was spa or not spa. I don't want him taking people. And he was fine. And then not too long after that, he did it again. And I said, out of here.
Mr. President, did one of those stolen, persons, that include Virginia Jeffrey?
I don't know. I think she worked at the spa. I think so. I think that was one of the people. Yeah. He stole her. And by the way, she had no complaints about us, as you know. None whatsoever.
And he's right about that. She doesn't have any complaints about Donald Trump. It's in her testimony. You can read it yourself. Let's also go to this right here. Hold on for processing just for a second. I thought I had one more thing on Trump banning Epstein, but no. Okay, let's go here. This is from CNN yesterday. And we're not going to go through the through the article at all, but this was on CNN's front page. Analysis: Joe Rogan isn't letting go of Epstein. That's a problem for Trump. And so I responded to this yesterday, posting it on Truth Social and on Telegram and whatnot. And this, like, I just shook my head. I was like, how could they even be trying this? This is so stupid. First of all, it's not a problem for Trump. Joe Rogan doesn't have the kind of DAP or street cred, or however you would like to say it, to make Trump look bad. Okay? It doesn't matter what the Rogan audience thinks about Donald Trump. Joe Rogan can ask for the Epstein files for months. If there's nothing in the Epstein files that's going to harm Trump, then certainly talking about it and being wrong while doing so is not going to harm Trump. It's like impossible to believe that somehow that could be a problem for Donald Trump. Again, Donald Trump knows whether or not there's some skeleton in his closet that's going to jump out from this Jeffrey Epstein story. And then you've got like the question of what the problem would even be for Donald Trump. What would the problem with Joe Rogan even taking away, in a real sense, if Joe Rogan could strip 25% of Trump's MAGA base, just cleave them from the MAGA base with the power of his words on Jeffrey Epstein, it still wouldn't matter because there's no election coming up. If there was an election tomorrow, it wouldn't matter that Joe Rogan is saying these things because nobody is turning away from Donald Trump on the basis of these things. So it couldn't even be a problem if an election was imminent. And it's certainly not a problem because the next Donald Trump presidential election, if we still have to go through the nonsense of elections at that point, well, that's going to be in 3.5 years from now. So what would Rogan being upset at Epstein mean for that? Oh, it's going to hurt Republicans in the midterms. All right. Along those same lines, this is MSNBC, and I'll let them give the setup. This is Morning Joe. And then they go into a clip from the podcast of a comedian named Andrew Schultz that I've played him on the podcast before. He interviewed Donald Trump during the campaign last year, and there was some really interesting stuff from that interview on Iran, on denuclearization, et cetera, that we've referenced a bunch of times. But here is that clip, and then we'll get through Schultz, and then I'll stop it.
They were run by Garland. They were run by Biden and all of the people that actually ran the government, including the auto pen. Those files were run for 4 years by those people. If they had anything, I assume they would have released it. The whole thing is a hoax.
Again, the alleged hoax took place during Donald Trump's first administration when Jeffrey Epstein was arrested on federal sex trafficking charges. President Trump fielding questions there yesterday about the Jeffrey Epstein case while overseas in Scotland. Meanwhile, the Trump administration's handling of the files has angered prominent podcasters like comedian Andrew Schultz, someone who says he voted for President Trump.
He is rebuking the base, almost like spitting in their face. They are asking for it. He campaigned on it. He puts Bongino and Cash in there, which might be the stupidest thing in the history of the world. Why would you put the two guys that have nonstop pounded the pavement talking about how we're going to expose this Epstein thing, and the second they get in there, you better shut the up.
Yeah, to shut him up.
Go on Rogan, lie. It is a very peculiar thing. It worked in that I think it moved any of the smoke off of Trump. Because, at least for me, I was like, there's no way that he's involved if he's putting Bongino and Cash in who have campaigned on exposing it. Why would you hire those guys or appoint those guys, right? So I'm like, he can't be. But the fact that he will not touch this, and then this last week, him doing the distractions.
Bro.
dropping the MLK file. Like, who asked for the MLK file? The second he started talking about Obama, I was like, oh, he's guilty.
Yeah.
Also, like, why are you talking about Obama and treason? You got a guy who has sex with teenagers that you are protecting.
So we can let it go there. Those are NPCs, okay? That is just a retarded person. None of that makes any sense. These are supposed to be the new thought leaders on the MAGA side. Oh, he's even losing the MAGA friendly guys like Joe Rogan and Andrew Schultz. They're so upset over this Epstein thing. And by the way, those retards are all dressed like weird dandies and sitting like Gavin Newsom. How is it that American men are like, oh yeah, this is the based way to go? It's mind-blowing. And by the way, he is a good comedian, but this is retarded. I mean, you're an NPC, you're an NPC. Let us continue. Here is John Solomon giving us an update. Wait, is this in the right order? Give me just a moment here. I suppose it is, yes. We are going to transition from the Jeffrey Epstein business to the related scandal, the Trump Russiagate Rico Grande process. This is John Solomon giving an update from where we were about a week ago.
You to watch the Russiagate scandal, what I call the grand conspiracy, because it really is a 10-year conspiracy. Two major developments. We expect CIA Director John Ratcliffe to release new declassified documents in the next 48 hours. What is it going to show? My sources say it will show that the FBI knew full and well that when they started Crossfire Hurricane and began investigating that it was nothing more than a ruse approved and actually manufactured by Hillary Clinton and her campaign. That those documents will leave no doubt. We already knew that President Obama knew that. The question we had was, did the frontline FBI people know that? We're going to get that answer in documents that John Ratcliffe, the CIA director, expects to declassify as soon as the next 48 hours. And then on another front, everybody go to Just the News around 8:30 tonight, justthenews.com. We're going to have a great story by my colleague, Jerry Dunleavy. It's going to give you the real political beliefs, the real thoughts of the woman, the CIA officer who wrote the Russian intelligence analysis, the rewritten one, not the one that was originally produced for Obama, but the one Obama ordered, saying that Vladimir Putin was trying to help Donald Trump win the election. We now know that the conclusion was significantly challenged, and there's good reason to doubt it. This woman's political views, her thoughts on the Steele dossier, and a whole lot more will shock you, even though you've been shocked enough. We'll have all of those details around 8:30 tonight. Go to justthenews.com.
Hyped that up pretty well. So let's get into some more of these details. And rather than going to just the news, we can simply go to John Ratcliffe himself. Let me just make sure I'm in the right order here. All right. So Ratcliffe says he's going to release these big files or these files that the public has not seen that will have a big impact on Maria Bartiromo the other day. Here is Ratcliffe on Maria.
Look, our audience knows this thanks to you and thanks to Devin Nunes. Our audience is well aware of what took place here, but we want to see accountability. Many of the statute of limitations have expired. It's been almost 10 years for many of these folks who did this. But John Brennan testified to Congress, and so did Hillary Clinton, within 5 years. I think it was in 2020, right, and then again in 2021. Are those statute of limitations still live? Tell me if, in fact, we could see a criminal prosecution here, as you just the other day, 3 weeks ago, have, in fact, referred criminal referrals to the DOJ.
Well, Maria, so part of what came out last week was about how John Brennan, Clapper, Comey, they all pushed the known fake Steele dossier into intelligence community assessments and as the basis for Crossfire Hurricane and all that. But what hasn't come out yet, and what's going to come out, is the underlying intelligence, that I have spent the last few months making recommendations about final declassification and sent that to the Department of Justice that will come out in the John Durham report classified annex. And what that intelligence shows, Maria, is that part of this was a Hillary Clinton plan, but part of it was an FBI plan to be an accelerant to that fake Steele dossier, to those fake Russia collusion claims by pouring oil on the fire, by amplifying the lie and burying the truth of what Hillary Clinton was up to. And you're right, Maria. John Brennan testified to John Durham in August of 2020. He also testified to the House Oversight Committee in 2022. Hillary Clinton testified before John Durham under oath in 2022. James Comey testified before the Senate committee in September 2020. All of that's within the last 5 years. And much of that testimony is, frankly, completely inconsistent with what our underlying intelligence that is about to be declassified in the Durham Annex, what that reflects. And so, you know, Pam Bondi does have a strike force. It is a different Department of Justice, a different FBI, and an opportunity to look at how these people really did conspire to run a hoax, a fraud on the American people and against Donald Trump's presidency. And so coming forward, we understand that they did this, but now we need to understand how they did this. And I think that's why you see the left losing their minds over this, Maria, saying, why are you spending time? This is vindictive. You're going back. This is Donald Trump, you know, seeking retribution. It's not. Donald Trump's election by the American people was a statement, Maria. They said to everyone, we know what you did to Donald Trump, and we reelected him because we know this was all fake. We know it was a hoax. Now we want to understand how you did it so that it can't happen again. And that's what this declassification process that we're undergoing right now, what's going on, why it's so important, and why there can be accountability and preventability to prevent these same people that did it in 2016 with the Steele dossier, with the Hunter Biden laptop in 2020 from doing it again in the future.
All right. And so the idea being that it'll probably be the Epstein hoax. That is the thing that they were intending to do in the future. And they've been setting it up for quite a long time. Now, we talked about the Obama impeachment. She goes on to ask him if treason is a possibility. She talks about the statute of limitations. I feel like we've gone through those things a couple of times. So the Obama immunity can cover his official acts, but that doesn't mean it covers every part of the program that Obama is involved with. And it certainly wouldn't cover him in parts of his career for which he wasn't president, things that happened before, things that have happened since. In his private conduct, he does not have, I don't think there's any reason to believe that he would have presidential immunity just because he was once president. I haven't seen that anywhere. If that's the case, okay, we can deal with that. But there are so many elements of Rico Grande, and we're hearing about them right now. John Solomon is calling it a grand conspiracy. I've been calling it Rico Grande for like 3 or 4 years. And now we are hearing there is this grand conspiracy story coming out. This is going to be how the case is processed together. Solomon told us we might have that Rico announcement by the end of July. So we could still be on track for that, I suppose. Can Obama get prosecuted for things other than his official acts and duties in Congress or in the presidency? Right now, the focus is on Obama, the intelligence community, the Steele dossier, the Clinton campaign, and that part of Russiagate. But that is not all Barack Obama has been involved with since he began in politics. While he was a senator, he was over in Ukraine touring biolabs. He is like single-handedly responsible for pushing the race division in our country, propping up BLM. He's a Marxist community organizer. He's responsible for Fast and Furious. And hey, man, I am open to all of these things having tricked me and me reading the PSYOP backwards, and Obama's like some great white knight, but I don't see it. Okay. And maybe it could happen. I never want to deny the possibility that I am wrong in a major way about an entire fact set, because the biases from one piece of the fact set affect the taking on of beliefs in the rest of the fact set. I'm like, well, that's true, and that's true, and that's true. Therefore, that's true, and that's true, and that's true. That's always a possibility, okay? Because we're going to lean in that direction because the pattern suggests that's the direction it's going. Could be wrong. It's important to say that. Also important to say, hat tip to my friend, the Storm Has Arrived 17, or actually it's now the Storm Redux, formerly the Storm Has Arrived 17. He was his watermark was on there. I didn't want it to look like I was watermarking on top of his watermark, because he's awesome and always grabbing great important clips like this. And I do appreciate him for that reason and for just being a good guy. Here is Ezra Cohen, formerly Ezra Cohen-Watnick. The Trump IC team, led by Ratcliffe and Gabbard, is wisely breaking the retired IC expert, quote, "If I told you I'd have to kill you," end quote, racket. Okay. So the whole thing about how sensitive information can't be relayed, certain questions can't be answered. If I told you I'd have to kill you, Ezra Cohen is saying this has to be pierced. That is no longer acceptable. He calls it a racket. And he says, whereby these former officials can go into the public sphere and spread falsehoods without having to show their math. This ploy is extremely damaging to the health of our civil society. By declassifying and publicly releasing records, the permanent security apparatus can't hide behind the classification excuse as they attempt to manipulate the public narrative. So all of that stuff that has been hidden, Ezra Cohen was on the classification review board. He is, I don't know if activist is the right word, but he is strongly motivated to remove the shield of classification from a whole range of information that should have never been classified in the first place and was only classified to keep out of the hands of certain people. And so they want to pierce through that veil and eliminate that problem. And I think that we are well on our way to seeing that happening, which is why they are prefacing it this way. Here is our good buddy, Mark Elias, seeming, again, quite nervous.
Trump is trying to change the attention of what issue his base is focused on. And they've tried a couple of things out, and none of them have really stuck. The latest one that we saw this week was for them to falsely suggest for the president to make wild-eyed accusations that somehow suggested that Barack Obama and those close to him committed treason or otherwise are involved in a cover-up involving the 2016 election. Okay, the very fact that Donald Trump is talking about the 2016 election shows you what political trouble he's in, because it's like a synapse goes off in his brain.
Donald Trump is in political trouble, and that's why he's talking about this. Mark Elias believes that MSNBC's audience will believe this, and that other people will also believe it, or it will be believed enough to provide them a defense against the other side, so that people are like, okay, well, one side says this, one side says this. We don't have enough evidence because we haven't looked and we haven't thought about it. Therefore, it's the way they say. That's what he's trying to pull off. I can't imagine that anybody's buying this. And the idea that Donald Trump is in political trouble, dude, you are in real legal trouble that includes complicity in crimes against humanity and crimes against the American people. Donald Trump's not nervous. Let's keep going with this.
That addled head of his that's like, ooh, I'm in trouble. Let's talk about Hillary Clinton in the 2016 election. Even though, by the way, he won that election. But they're back at that. And he's doing it not only in social media, he's doing it not only with speaking, but he is now deploying the force of the federal government, using government resources to pursue this. How do I know? Because it was announced late in the week by the Department of Justice. They were setting up a strike force to look into these ridiculous, spurious allegations. That's right, a strike force.
AG Pambondi has already formed a strike force.
I don't really know what a strike force means at the Department of Justice. I mean, after all, let's be honest, it's a bunch of lawyers. So I assume they mean something more like a task force, but probably they didn't think task force sounded cool enough, so they went with strike force.
Sure,
anyway,
that's what it is.
I worry that what they are going to do is further politicize the Department of Justice to suggest that there is some there when there is absolutely not. There is zero there. There's zero there here. There's zero there anywhere. All right, you can tell I've been on the road too long that I'm not necessarily making all the sense in the world, but it's important that you get these updates so that you're kept up.
That is incredible. He knows he's not making sense. He sounds like a Dr. Seuss book. And Donald Trump is the nervous one? It's amazing. These people are amazing. Here is how nervous Donald Trump is. This is Donald Trump on Truth Social from Saturday in the morning, by the way. Just this picture. And what we have in this picture is Donald Trump in a police car chasing the OJ Ford Bronco driven by Barack Obama. And in the police car next to Trump's police car is the fat JD Vance meme, like basically riding shotgun in a different car. And I'm not saying he's in that car riding shotgun. They placed him behind the steering wheel. I'm just saying he's riding shotgun in comparison to Trump. Trump using the JD Vance meme is hilarious. JD Vance is only that meme now. Let's keep going. All right, now we are really making some headway. We might be able to blaze through most of the rest of what I had going on. We've been getting our blaze on. This is just a story I want to highlight, though not exactly in the mix of all we're talking about. It does connect just on the idea of all of these complicit players in the global regime being held accountable. It definitely connects on that level and that layer. And of course, Harvard is connected to Jeffrey Epstein. It is connected to, obviously, the Uniparty and government. Barack Obama is a University of Harvard graduate. And what an awful place. It might not even be an American place. The charter is still its old British charter, I believe. Harvard is said to be open to spending up to $500 million to resolve Trump dispute. That is the headline in the New York Times. Hold for processing 1 second, because I want to make sure we are aware of what Harvard's current endowment is. Harvard University's endowment is the largest academic endowment in the world, valued at approximately $53.2 billion as of the end of June. Okay? So $53.2 billion, and they're going to go down to $52.7 billion as part of this settlement. Now, maybe they're a minor player and this is a suitable amount. Can't imagine that. I mean, how much federal money has gone to Harvard? How much of Harvard's endowment is a function of their complicity and corruption? So I would think that if drainage properly done would shrink Harvard's endowment well beyond this. Now, it's possible that endowment is all invested in other companies and organizations that are going to eventually get drained themselves, which will bring the value of that endowment down substantially. But we haven't seen that step yet. Harvard University has signaled a willingness to meet the Trump administration's demand to spend as much as $500 million to end its dispute with the White House as talks between the two sides intensify. 4 people familiar with the negotiations said. According to one of the people, Harvard is reluctant to directly pay the federal government, but negotiators are still discussing the exact financial terms. The sum sought by the government is more than twice as much as the $200 million fine that Columbia University said it would pay when it settled its clash with the White House last week. It would also satisfy President Trump's private demands that Harvard should pay far more than Columbia. The people who described the talks and the dynamics surrounding them spoke on the condition of anonymity to discuss confidential negotiations. So, Harvard, like the media companies, like the law firms, is being taken to task. They're going to settle so that is their recompense, I guess. Hopefully it's more. Hopefully we'll see that in the future. Hopefully people just stop wanting to go to Harvard. If we stripped Harvard of its abstract power, which is its reputation, Harvard would be no more. Okay, but we don't do that because most people are still enamored with Harvard's reputation and think that it is very meaningful in their social class. So they don't want to leave that. They know they have to still abide by those experts. So Harvard is very, very important. Harvard is being taken apart, as is Columbia. This is wonderful news. And we'll see where it's going in the future. But Trump continues to win these issues. Every time he fights one, he wins it. Now, to be fair to the communists, because I watched the Norm Eisen interview on Frontline over the weekend, they believe that they are kicking Donald Trump's ass in court every time they get one of those temporary injunctions, okay? These nationwide injunctions that they can't even get anymore. Norm Eisen, this is 3 months ago when the interview was recorded, was bragging about their success in the courts. That success is temporary and it's headed back in the other direction. And Trump is crushing them down all these avenues. So this is how, let's get to Trump's European trip. This is how the mainstream media tried to portray Donald Trump's trip to Scotland. Trump flees Washington as Epstein scandal simmers. And there he is in a golf cart. And he did play golf at Turnberry, which he calls the greatest course in the world. And maybe it is. I'm not a golfer. I hear that it is certainly in the discussion for the greatest course. And Eric Trump also just opened a links course there. I thought maybe I had that one, but I do not. So we will skip past the links course business. But the subheadline here is, while the White House has called his 5-day trip a working visit, the formal itinerary is fairly light. So there wasn't enough on the president's schedule for CNN. And so they show him playing golf and implying that he's taking a vacation because he's so stressed out about the Epstein files. Well, that ain't true. The same day when they posted that afternoon, I think it was Saturday, he was already like wrapping up a 3-day war that, we were told about last week between Cambodia and Thailand. And then the next day he's meeting Ursula von der Leyen. And the next day, the British Prime Minister, Keir Starmer. And we'll get into all of that. But the idea that Trump didn't get anything done while overseas except play golf and flee the Epstein Files hoax, these people are insane. But then again, they believe it. Their audience believes it. They know their audience is going to believe it. And that is what makes them so cruel and so divisive, because none of it's true. I mean, they're just participating in the derangement of their own audience. I can't imagine something worse than that. Donald Trump on Truth Social just spoke to the Prime Minister of Cambodia relative to stopping the war with Thailand. I'm calling the acting Prime Minister of Thailand right now to likewise request a ceasefire and end to the war which is currently raging. We happen to be, by coincidence, currently dealing on trade with both countries, but do not want to make any deal with either country if they are fighting, and I have told them so. The call with Thailand is being made momentarily. The call with Cambodia has ended, but expect to call back regarding war stoppage and ceasefire based on what Thailand has to say. I am trying to simplify a complex situation. Many people are being killed in this war, but it very much reminds me of the conflict between Pakistan and India, which was brought to a successful halt and, again, didn't really happen. Okay, so now we have Trump ending 2 wars that weren't really happening within just days of them beginning between these two longtime rival countries. Okay, Thailand and Cambodia have had a border dispute for at least, I think, 15 plus years, but probably much longer than that. And India, Pakistan, same thing. And again, we're talking about the borders drawn by the global regime being erased over time. That's the macro pattern. So Trump is showing to the world that these 2 former rivals are not rivals anymore. Look at this. They're such rivals that now they're going to war. Oh, they're not going to war anymore. I solved it. The president of peace, the man who should get the Nobel Prize, but obviously never will, solves all these wars that aren't happening in 2 days. And again, the info war and the narrative war is more important than these fake wars. And Trump is fighting that in his communications. So I'm not mad at Trump, but we should be realistic about what's happening here. Honestly, we should be pleased about the accelerated pace of this thing. If we don't have to go through a Ukraine length or Israel length war story about these countries and it can just get wrapped up, wonderful. Okay. The last thing we want to do is hear about India and Pakistan in a war for the next 3 years. They would have, rather than the ghost of Kyiv, the ghost of Mumbai, formerly Bombay. Call it Bombay again. That's when we'll know that we have made progress. Donald Trump keeps going with Cambodia and Thailand. I've just spoken to the acting prime minister of Thailand, and it was a very good conversation. Thailand, like Cambodia, wants to have an immediate ceasefire and peace. I am now going to relay that message back to the prime minister of Cambodia. After speaking to both parties, ceasefire, peace, and prosperity seems to be a natural. We will soon see. So Trump calls one, Trump calls the other. It is like when the kid goes into the dad's room and is like, hey, dad, mom said I could do this if you agree. Do you agree? And the dad's like, yeah, fine. And then you go back to the mom and you're like, dad said, if you agree to do this, he agrees. Those kids, they're so tricky. I definitely didn't do that when I was a kid. I don't think I did, actually. I would just talk to my parents until they would let me do what I wanted to do. That's funny. Donald Trump on Truth Social says, sorry, that was the same one. Let me get the next one up there. Here it is. I just had a very good call with the Prime Minister of Cambodia and informed him of my discussions with Thailand and its acting Prime Minister. Both parties are looking for an immediate ceasefire and peace. They're also looking to get back to the trading table with the United States, which we think is inappropriate to do until such time as the fighting stops. They have agreed to immediately meet and quickly work out a ceasefire and ultimately peace. It was an honor to deal with both countries. They have a long and storied history and culture. They will hopefully get along for many years to come. When all is done and peace is at hand, I look forward to concluding our trade agreements with both. So the takeaway here is that these trade agreements are the alternative to war. and that the US market, being part of the US market, is so critical and so important, and being able to sell into it with low tariff rates is so critical and so important that they will even put their differences with their long warring neighbors aside to be able to make trade deals with the United States. And Donald Trump is drilling that into the heads of everyone all around the world so that they understand the top-down system of control over the world's economy does not prevent wars. They tell us that's going to be the end of wars. That is not the end of wars. Wars persist because they need both sides of the controlled opposition dynamic to play the proper role, which is what they were doing when they were at war and when they were part of that top-down centralized global economy. But when they make a deal directly with the United States and then put that war thing aside, well, then they've stepped out of that controlled opposition dynamic and they are something else entirely. And that is exactly what we see happening. Donald Trump, final post, wrapping it all up. Just spoke to the acting Prime Minister of Thailand and Prime Minister of Cambodia. I am pleased to announce that after the involvement of President Donald J. Trump, both countries have reached a ceasefire and peace. Congratulations to all. By ending this war, we have saved thousands of lives. I have instructed my trade team to restart negotiations on trade. I have now ended many wars in just 6 months. I am proud to be the president of peace. And what does it mean, by the way, that Donald Trump could never win a Nobel Prize? Well, Nobel Prizes for peace are not actually given away for people who create peace. They gave one to Obama for being black. They give Nobel Science Prizes to total bullshit. Okay? It's just a function of the regime. It is to put prestige on individuals. That is the purpose of the Nobel Peace Prize. So it is utterly meaningless. The people who have always controlled it have used it as a weapon against us. So even if the prize itself had meaning, Donald Trump receiving it, the only meaning that could be there, by the way, is that, oh, those people have folded it as well. Like they've just given up the fight as well. And that would be worth it. That would be good. Go ahead and do it for that reason. Okay. But that's the story that we would have to then take away from that. Not that, oh, wow, Donald Trump really did bring us peace. Imagine needing it proven to you that Trump created peace because he received a Nobel Peace Prize. That's what finally makes it real. It's crazy. It's an upside down world. Okay. Everything is inverted. That's why so many things that seem sensible in one mindset, in another mindset, are absolutely the opposite thing. And I don't know, man. I am fascinated with that dynamic, and you can find it everywhere because the simulation of our reality layered on top of reality prime is meant to cover everything, and it's meant to invert everything. That's the purpose of these stories. It's an inversion of what the reality is. So we need to be able to locate the inversions. Let's continue. This quickly is just the Prime Minister of Thailand, I believe, announcing a ceasefire. Cambodia and Thailand announced a ceasefire.
Cambodia and Thailand reached a common understanding as follows. 1. An immediate and unconditional ceasefire with effect from 24 hours local time, midnight, on 28th July 2025, tonight.
Hold for processing for 1 second. I want to find out what that flag in the middle is, because it looks like, obviously, an American flag, except rather than 50 stars, it is just a big golden sun. This is potentially the flag of Liberia. Not sure that sounds just right. You just can't trust ChatGPT anymore, and it's very, very sad. Let me see what Perplexity says. If Perplexity says it too, then I will assume that they are correct. Oh, man. Hold for processing. I hate a hold for processing. I did not want to have a hold for processing on any of this, but here we are holding for processing. Perplexity, drum roll, please. Oh, cool. It's not letting me actually copy and paste the thing I wrote before. This is great. Flag with red and white stripes. Blue corner, yellow star. Let's see. Or yellow sun, I guess. Oh, now I can't. Oh, gosh. We're gonna skip this, okay? We're gonna say it's the flag of Liberia, and if that's wrong, fine. I don't know if that's true or not. That seems wrong, but who knows? So the prime minister there, the point of this was that the prime minister is announcing all of that in English, and you've got to consider the audience. And I know that English is kind of the universal language, if there was one, but he's still saying it in English. And I would guess that when Donald Trump encouraged him to do that, that is probably what he had in mind. So the ceasefire, we have visual, optical proof that the ceasefire is real, according to the leaders of those other countries, which means now Trump can make a trade deal with them, and none of the war history can be used to disrupt that trade deal. Let's keep going. So let's get back to tilting at windmills, okay? So you remember that from the beginning, from Don Quixote. It's about fighting against an imaginary enemy. And so CanCon and I, as I said, talked about that yesterday on Badlands Daily. And here is Il Papi Trumpo, Il Donaldo Trumpo, the Twitter account, the meme account. And it says, "We will slay every last friggin' windmill." And it's Donald Trump riding on a horse in a full suit of armor with a sword raised above his head. And J.D. Vance on a donkey next to him. And they are going to go battle all of those windmills. Seems to be, that meme, a direct reference to Don Quixote. So I like that. Here is what Donald Trump had to say about windmills.
Try. I will say this, they did ask me when I got off the plane, immigration, Europe has a tremendous problem, and we do too, but we've sealed our borders. We have nobody coming in, and we have hundreds of thousands of people being taken out, and the bad ones first, and I think we're doing a very good job of that. But we had, it literally registered 0 people last month. You probably saw that, nobody. And Europe has a very similar problem. I think they're going to end up in the same place. You might as well go there quicker. And the other thing I say to Europe, we will not allow a windmill to be built in the United States. They're killing us. They're killing the beauty of our scenery, our valleys, our beautiful plains. And I'm not talking about airplanes. I'm talking about beautiful plains, beautiful areas in the United States. And you look up, and you see windmills all over the place. It's a horrible thing. It's the most expensive form of energy. It's no good. They're made in China, almost all of them. When they start to rust and rot in 8 years, you can't really turn them off. You can't bury them. They won't let you bury the propellers, the props, because they're a certain type of fiber that doesn't go well with the land. That's what they say. The environmentalists say you can't bury them because the fiber doesn't go well with the land. In other words, if you bury it, it will harm our soil. The whole thing is a con job. It's very expensive. And in all fairness, Germany tried it, and wind doesn't work. You need subsidy for wind, and energy should not need subsidy. With energy, you make money. You don't lose money. But more important than that is it ruins the landscape. It kills the birds. They're noisy. You have a certain place in the Massachusetts area that over the last 20 years had 1 or 2 whales wash ashore, and over the last short period of time, they had 18. Okay, because it's driving them loco. It's driving them crazy. Now, windmills will not come. It's not going to happen in the United States, and it's very expensive. And I would love to see. I mean, today I'm playing the best course I think in the world, Turnberry. Even though I own it, it's probably the best course in the world, right? And I look over the horizon and I see 9 windmills. It's like great. At the end of the 18th, I said, isn't that a shame? What a shame. You have the same thing all over Europe in particular. You have windmills all over the place. Some of the countries prohibit it, but people ought to know that these windmills are very destructive. They're environmentally unsound, just the exact opposite. Because the environmentalists, they're not really environmentalists. They're political hacks. These are people that they almost want to harm the country. But you look at these beautiful landscapes all over the, the world. Many countries have gotten smart. They will not allow it. They will not. It's the worst form of energy, the most expensive form of energy. But
so let's think about that form of energy. Okay, the worst form of energy, the most expensive form of energy, and it fails a lot. It doesn't provide enough energy to keep places going. We saw that in Austin, Texas back in, I think it was 2021, and it's happened in a few other places as well. Energy is one of the most important things in the world, the most important resources in the world, and they want to be able to restrict that energy so that it only goes where they want it to go. They want to be able to use it as a tool to manipulate masses of people. And that's how they do use it in California. They tell people, hey, you know what? You have to put your air conditioner at 78 degrees in the middle of the summer. It can't go below that. Otherwise, you're going to have brownouts, and then no one is going to have electricity. So if you don't comply, then it's going to affect everyone, including you, which is the same motivation that they gave people back during COVID. So this is a weapon for the regime controlling the energy, and Donald Trump, who we know is pushing an energy revolution, new sources of energy, abundant energy, cheap energy, nuclear energy. He is over there telling the president of the European Commission, who he made travel to see him at his golf club, that's his ballroom at Turnberry. He made the president of the European Commission go there to make a trade deal with him and to listen to him tell her that, oh, your whole windmill thing, never going to happen. One of the key members of the regime. I mean, Sergei Lavrov calls her Führer Ursula. And I think actually I saw Dmitry Medvedev call her that as well. And Trump's just like, yeah, none of your program, the immigration thing he mentioned, Europe's immigration problem. He goes on the windmill thing, just issue after issue after issue, crushing these people right in front of her as he takes every question from the White House press pool that, of course, was with him, and probably, local and global media as well. But the White House press pool, he's gotten rid of the Associated Press and what was it? Wall Street Journal, I think he just recently banned. So really interesting dynamic there. I think the windmills thing is more than just Trump talking about an environmental issue that he cares about. He used the windmills being built in the sight lines of Turnberry as an example. Look how disgusting that is. This is one of the most beautiful locations in the world. It's not quite natural. It's been turned into a golf course, but otherwise the nature that golf course is built into is one of the most beautiful places you can be in the world. And you look out over this beautiful sea and see windmills. It's a good point. And they're dangerous, and they're bad, and they don't work. Dangerous, by the way, because they go in the soil. Bad because they kill birds. Just making sure. I mean, Trump ran through the points. I just didn't want to seem like I was just complaining without cause. A couple Rumble rants in the chat. Doc from Amish PA, $10. Great show. Only an hour behind the live stream. Enjoy your time away, CP. See ya in the ether. And thank you very much, my friend. Also, Beth gifted 5 subscriptions, and I wanted to be sure to note that. The best is yet to come also said, I could buy that scenario talking about Obama with the impeachment post-presidency and then the prosecution. But if Obozo was not ever eligible to be president because of his birthplace, how do you impeach as a legitimate president? That is an excellent question. And I would suggest that the same narrative cover story that's being used that we're discussing is going to be used to cover that up too. That's entirely possible. So we shall see how much of this stuff gets fully unwound and how much is actually unwound with a false narrative layer over it. Okay. While we're on speaking of the environment, but while we're on the subject of climate and climate change and environmentalists and the rest of it, this is Bloomberg from yesterday. EPA to abolish U.S. government authority to regulate greenhouse gases. The Trump administration is set to announce its plans to abolish the U.S. government's authority to regulate greenhouse gases, threatening to strike a deep blow at Washington's ability to fight climate change. Who still believes this? The Environmental Protection Agency will unveil a proposal as early as Tuesday to scrap a landmark determination that planet-warming gases endanger public health and welfare, according to people familiar with the matter. If finalized, the move would lay the foundation to unwind a host of regulations limiting emissions from power plants, oil wells, and automobiles. The EPA's proposal will also aim to end some automobile emission limits, one of the people said. The agency declined to comment. Rolling back the 2009 endangerment finding would be among the most far-reaching steps yet by President Donald Trump's administration to gut U.S. capacity to fight climate change. The finding forms the bedrock of the government's authority to impose limits on carbon dioxide, methane, and other greenhouse gases. Ending it would be squarely at odds with the scientific consensus that those gases are causing climate change that's already leading to rising seas and more intense storms. And it really is just a matter of whether or not you believe that that is happening. Because if it's not happening, then giving the government the power to regulate all of that would be total overreach. Why would you allow the government to regulate that if it wasn't actually true that carbon dioxide and methane were killing our climate and making our sea levels rise, even though there's no proof of any of that? One thing from the end of this article, energy companies also have warned that doing away with the endangerment finding, as well as the federal climate regulations it supports, could revive public nuisance lawsuits against oil producers and power plant operators. Under a 2010 Supreme Court decision, federal climate regulation under the Clean Air Act has effectively precluded those claims. Okay? So the energy companies are worried that there are going to be more lawsuits against them. That's what we're being told, that industry leaders say this is going to end up bad. Well, it doesn't matter if it ends up bad for industry leaders. What matters is the federal government is not allowed to regulate that. Okay. And the Supreme Court has now attested to that. These federal government executive branch agencies do not have the right or ability, constitutional or otherwise, to create, or I shouldn't say otherwise because they've had this ability for a long time, but they have lost now the ability to be able to just create these rules by their own fiat, all these unelected bureaucrats deciding how things are going to be based on the implementation of their agenda, which calls for all of the money and science and the rest of it focused on climate change. Okay, so they've been going on with this for an awfully long time. This seems like a anti-Trump PR attempt to cover up as irresponsible and malign something that the EPA has to do because they can't be regulating that stuff in the first place. I would love to see Trump dismantle the EPA. We're going to do it in step-by-step fashion, I guess, but hopefully we are going to get there when it comes to the EPA. This is a wonderful step and could be the reason why he's putting out the windmill talk. Sorry, I was trying to pull up my next link. It is right here from, I think, a consultancy firm called the Apollo Academy. Maybe this is a place for learning and engaging and sharing knowledge. Okay. So they have a full suite of learning modules, on investing in alternatives to energy, blah, blah, blah. So this, you can look into the organization if you want. I don't need to spend time on that and do a live dig for this organization's full background. But here we are, Apollo Academy. This is from Saturday. The quality of CPI data continues to deteriorate. Okay. To calculate, this is consumer price index. To calculate consumer price index inflation, BLS teams collect approximately 90,000 price quotes every month, covering 200 different item categories. And there are several hundred field collectors active across 75 urban areas. So we have people that go around their community and report back about how much stuff costs. Okay. Who are those people paid by? What are their political leanings? What are their, if you want to make Trump look bad, if your entire 200 different item categories, several hundred field collectors, several hundred. Let me see if I can speak. That is a lot of people to tell you what's going on the ground when you probably have back-end data from the supermarket chains. Very odd. But anyhow, when data is not available, BLS staff typically develop estimates for approximately 10% of the cells in the CPI calculation. So 90% of the information is quote unquote real. 10% of it is they just make it up. However, the share of data in the CPI that is estimated has increased significantly in recent months and is now above 30%. In other words, almost a third of the prices going into the CPI at the moment are guesses based on other data collections in the CPI. And that, my friends, is the proof that Donald Trump has created inflation. That is what we are told. Prices are rising on all of these goods according to these figures that we made up. And that is also, by the way, the justification for the entire climate change agenda. So, what can we say about it all? Man, there's still too much stuff to get through. We are going to get through a bunch of it. Let's finish out Trump's European trip as best we can. And we're going to go light on the details with the Russia stuff, the Israel stuff, the China talks that are upcoming, and then the dynamic where Marco Rubio was going off on Nicolas Maduro over the weekend. They were having mayoral elections all over Venezuela, and they seem to have gone quite well. Rubio was announcing to the world that it is the Trump administration's stance that Nicolas Maduro is not the legitimate president of Venezuela. Let's just knock this out of the way really quickly, and then we'll get into the rest of it and then wrap things up. This is Rubio on Sunday. Maduro is not the president of Venezuela, and his regime is not the legitimate government. Maduro is the head of the Cartel de los Soles, a narco-terror organization which has taken possession of a country, and he is under indictment for pushing drugs into the United States. You know what that gang is actually called? Pfizer, okay? The Mexican cartel brings drugs into the United States from the pharma companies, and then they split their part off, and that goes to become street drugs. So this is the pharma companies. This is the pharma company problem. 3 hours in, you don't know how my voice will function at that point. But they are calling into question the legitimacy of Venezuela's elections. We were told last year Nicolas Maduro stole an election from Maria Corina Machado, who was being smuggled in like Kamala Harris under a Joe Biden candidate. And Elon Musk was the one who announced that the election was actually fraudulent based on Edison Research exit polling, which is utterly meaningless. Okay. And then they had a nonsense back and forth on Twitter. In the meantime, Maduro has talked about how the illegitimate Biden administration was responsible for Tren de Aragua and other drug operations heading into the U.S. And in addition to all that, the global regime has been trying to take Maduro out for a decade plus. And so I see this from Rubio and I'm like, okay, either Rubio is still just a neocon, and that's possible, or there's something else going on. And then General Flynn jumped in and reaffirmed the same thing Maduro said. They want everybody to know that Maria Corina Machado, she's the real president, just like Juan Guaido was. The Trump administration said that in 2020, and Juan Guaido was never the president of Venezuela. And then eventually they just announced, oh yeah, he's not the president. He is just the basically the Speaker of the House in their illegitimate regime form of parliamentary government. Okay. So Maria Corina Machado isn't even that. So what could be going on here? And we don't have to go all the way through. Damn it. I hate when I'm tiny on the screen. So apologies for that. Sometimes I forget. We don't have to go all the way through this article, but there was, this is from Telesur English, and they are like a Southern Hemisphere news outlet, I think, especially in the Latin world. 8 proven truths how Venezuela 2025 municipal elections cemented peace, youth power, and democratic resilience. And Maduro was posting all these pictures about how the elections were going. This article runs through all of the wonderful aspects of the election they just held that we are supposed to believe is just totally invalid because Maduro's not the legitimate leader. He stole his election last year, blah, 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 blah. They've already tried this, okay? There's no point in it working. But what it does do is it totally takes Trump's responsibility for anything that happens with Venezuela away from Trump, just as the anti-CCP or anti-Russia or anti-any other country effort does the same thing, okay? The idea that Trump is colluding with Russia and colluding with China doesn't make a whole lot of sense to a lot of people. Now, collusion might be too strong a word, but there is obviously a shared interest in pursuing a common goal among these leaders of these nations. And that is not Donald Trump siding with our enemy. That's Donald Trump siding with the global regime's enemy everywhere it exists, which or siding against the global regime's, that enemy party. I want to make sure I say that right and didn't say it the way that turns it back on us. The same enemy Trump is fighting here is being fought around the world by those leaders in their own countries in the same way. And that stuff is coordinated, moving toward this multipolar world order that we can see emerging and that we can see Trump creating, or at least explaining to the world. Again, always got to remember, the Great Reset was going to include all that stuff too. So you still have to keep an eye on all this and press it in the right direction. Let's continue. Where are we? Okay, here we are. Oh, well. Here is Donald Trump with Ursula von der Leyen. Where is it? Here it is.
As a tough negotiator and deal maker, what is in front and fair, and what is in front of us.
That's less important.
If we are successful, I think it would be the biggest deal each of us has ever struck. So I'm very much looking forward.
Ever struck by anybody? That's true.
Yeah.
That's true. Right now we have that honor goes to Japan. We just struck a deal with Japan, as you know. And we're very close to a deal with China. We really sort of made a deal with China, but we'll see how that goes. And we have numerous other deals. And mostly I'm just going to charge tariffs. And, you know, it's not a deal per se, but people are going to pay tariffs. And we're doing them at the low end, not the high end, because we don't want to hurt anybody. And pretty well, but you and I both figured this is really the biggest trading partnership in the world, so we should give it a shot, right?
Yeah. Very much looking forward to that.
Oh, thank you very much. I do too.
She's very much looking forward to that. So she traveled to Donald Trump's house and then gave away the farm on the trade deal. And the geopolitical implications are enormous. We're going to get to those in just a second. One more from Trump with Ursula, talking about making a deal.
There 750 billion, 600 billion, opening up the country. We are agreeing that the tariff straight across for automobiles and everything else will be a straight across tariff of 15%. So we have a tariff of 15%. We have the opening up of all of the European countries, which I think I could say were essentially closed. I mean, you weren't exactly taking our autos, you weren't exactly taking our agriculture, and then you would have smaller things, but for the most part it was closed. And now it's open. It's open for our companies to go in and do a good job with it. I think you'll like them. I think you'll like it. And we will, very importantly, they'll be investing a lot of money, but the military is a big number, but that's one number we're not determining. It's going to be whatever it is, but they're going to be purchasing hundreds of billions of dollars worth of military equipment. They're very important. They're going to purchase $750 billion worth of energy. So that's going to be great. And $600 billion worth of investments into the United States over and above what they have. So, and I think that basically concludes the deal. I mean, those are the main factors. I don't think there are too many other factors, other than we're going to get along great. And we have a great relationship now with NATO, which is largely the same. I mean, not exactly, but pretty close, right? Largely. And with NATO, as you know, they're going up to 5% from 2%. And the relationship is very strong with NATO. So I just want to congratulate you. I think it's great that we made a deal today instead of playing games and maybe not making a deal at all. I think it's, I'm going to let you say, but I think it's the biggest deal ever made. Thank you very much. Congratulations.
The biggest deal ever made. That is the regime's home. The European Commission, the European Union, that's the global regime. You add in Israel and, you know, the controls slipping on America. It might be slipping on Israel too. I think it probably is. That's the regime. And they are being brought under the thumb visibly right there. You can see it. Donald Trump was treated like a king of the world again. Ursula von der Leyen and Keir Starmer, the Prime Minister of the UK, both traveled separately to Donald Trump's location. Von der Leyen was actually out there last week traveling to China, or just even a few days before she met with Trump. And they sent a bus for her and her entourage. They all arrived to the red carpet by bus. These people are being made to look foolish. This also is, Ursula, a bit off topic, but it's got to be added.
A better world also means a healthier world. And vaccination is our best chance to do this. Vaccines have saved millions of lives in the past 50 years. But right now, millions of children are still at risk. They need vaccines. So we must continue to support vaccination around the world. And today, I am pleased to pledge $290 million for Gavi, the Vaccine Alliance.
That's Bill Gates,
Each
basically.
child should be protected. And more will come. Together with Gavi, we have the goal to vaccinate 500 million children by 2030.
These people are crazy. This, let's just, I realized that I have this here. So this is the arrival by bus.
International Airport in the early hours of July 24th. Chinese President Xi Jinping will meet with President Costa and President von der Leyen, while Chinese Premier Li Qiang will co-chair the 25th China-EU summit with the two EU leaders. The summit takes place as China and the EU mark the 50th anniversary of diplomatic.
Could you imagine Trump arriving in a bus to anything? I can imagine him landing on the roof in a helicopter. I cannot imagine him riding in a bus to anything. And I would also wonder if Trump has ever been on a bus. Oh, no, wait. He was on a bus with what was it? The Entertainment Tonight report, Billy Bush, whatever his name was. Isn't that the Grab Him by the Pussy video? Isn't that on a bus? Or I mean, audio, whatever it was. Let's keep going. Man, oh man, are we going to get to the end? No, we are not. This is response translated by some random Twitter account, but from French former presidential candidate and still the leader of the Nationalist Party in France, Marine Le Pen, says she criticizes the deal signed between Trump and the president of Europe, von der Leyen. This is an outright surrender for French industry and for our energy and military sovereignty. The commission accepted asymmetric clauses that France itself, governed by a patriotic executive, would never have accepted. Hundreds of billions of euros in gas as well as armaments will have to be imported annually from the United States. So Marine Le Pen is pretty upset that Donald Trump got the best of this deal by a long shot. And so what are we going to see if these countries are actually negatively affected by this deal? Well, maybe they're going to call Donald Trump and be like, hey, hey, President Trump, it's France. Yes, I know we're terrible. But do you want to make a deal? Because we don't really like that European Commission deal. And we were thinking that it would be better if we were your friend. And so can you be nice to us? That's what's going to happen. And then eventually the EU and the European Commission will all just disintegrate as they must. I could see that being the route for that things will be taking when it comes to trade in these economies. We are moving right along. Here is Dmitry Medvedev. Actually, I can't pull it up. I'm just going to Telegram for this because I didn't find it. I couldn't find him tweeting this. So Medvedev said, Trump wiped the floor with Europe. Say what you will about Trump for all his wildly contradictory statements and actions. There's one area where he's remarkably consistent. He relentlessly pushes his country's economic interests. The current deal with the European Union, one, is completely humiliating for the Europeans as it benefits only the U.S., eliminating tariffs and stripping protections from the European market in favor of American goods. Two, significantly increases costs for industry and agriculture throughout many European Union countries, driven by the requirement to purchase expensive American energy. Sorry about those windmills. Number three, redirects a powerful flow of investment from Europe to the U.S. And of course, the quote unquote deal is openly anti-Russian, banning the purchase of our oil and gas. But while for Trump, it's mostly about business, for senile old Europe, it's part of the neo-Nazi ideology that hurts the welfare of its own citizens. Nice call out. One can only feel sorry for ordinary Europeans. At this point, they might as well storm Brussels and string up all the Eurocrats from the flagpoles of the EU countries, including, of course, the rabid granny Ursula. It won't help, of course, but at least it'd be fun. That is very bold indeed. Dmitry Medvedev. Here is how Axios framed the other side of that issue. Trump trade deals prove access to the U.S. still matters above all else. So the Germany thing is interesting with the energy from Russia. You would expect that Germany is going to say no to purchasing energy from the United States, work out their own deal with Trump, and then keep purchasing energy from Russia. It would be shocking if that didn't happen, but we're not shocking. I would be surprised if that didn't happen. I wouldn't be shocked. I could just be wrong. That's totally possible. In the Trump-dominated global economy, the U.S. gets plenty, but gives nothing in return. This is the reality of the asymmetric trade deals touted by the White House, which show how far foreign leaders will have to go to safeguard access to the U.S. market. That is an admission that tariffs and bilateral relations destroy the global regime. And that's what he's doing. Trump announced agreements with Europe and Japan in which both agreed to drop their tariff rates to zero, promised eye-popping investments in the United States, and opened markets to American producers. In return, those countries get some assurance on their tariff rate, both 15%, and both of which could have been worse, even if it puts their industries at a disadvantage. Both Tokyo and Brussels apparently viewed the price of a 15% tariff worth paying in light of the alternative of higher tariffs, uncertainty, and counter-retaliation, said a former acting U.S. trade representative under Obama. And then they note his deals with Vietnam, the Philippines, and Indonesia, all of these high population countries opening their markets to American goods. This is American greatness being exported. It's not the regime's version of America being exported by force. That's what the global regime always did. This is America's interests being served in fair bilateral relations with these other countries. If they can't be self-sufficient, if they need goods from America and one of these other large economies, well, then they're going to have to work out deals with those countries to procure those goods. Okay. This is the sort of thing that stops the global regime from being able to run its influence and infiltration options in all of these different countries. It's incredible what's happening. It doesn't get nearly enough credit. This is Secretary of Commerce Howard Lutnick. President Trump just unlocked one of the biggest economies in the world. The European Union is going to open its $20 trillion market and completely accept our auto and industrial standards for the first time ever. In addition, it will purchase $750 billion in energy from the U.S. and invest $600 billion in America. That is $1.35 trillion, otherwise known as about 1/30th, let's say, 1/30th of our, I'm thinking about my math, obviously, here. I don't want to totally blow it. 1/30th plus 1/33rd, maybe, of our total U.S. debt. And we're seeing this sort of thing happen in many other examples as well. It was $500 billion from Japan. What is this? I would suggest it's countries being drained. These are the amounts that are necessary to come back in that will not go to the government, but go to businesses instead. And these are the sorts of things that will erase debts while providing a cover story over those debts. Lutnick says our tariff will be set at 15% across the board. Today is an historic day for U.S. trade and will strengthen our relationship with the European Union for decades to come. We shall see. I bet that it will. Here is Donald Trump. He posted this himself on Truth Social.
The biggest deal ever made, I guess you could say. It's certainly the biggest trade deal ever made. You know, they're buying $750 billion worth of our energy. You know, they're going to invest $600 or $650 billion into the United States, and they're going to invest probably $300 billion for the military, maybe $400 billion in military equipment separately.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a massive deal for everybody. I think what they did is very smart. You know, they have a deal now with us, and it's going to bring us together. It's going to unite us. We'll work together, but it's numbers that nobody's ever heard of before.
Huge numbers indeed. Biggest deal ever. Trump got it done. So there's some more Scotland stuff and some Medvedev and the rest of it for geopolitics. But I think that we are probably going to leave it there due to the time. I think that we got a good summation of what has happened the last few days in. There is some geopolitical stuff. If you are not already following on Telegram, t.me/veryreasonable, follow there. Okay. All of the stuff that I don't get to in the show is going to appear there in some form. And that is the best way to keep up with what I'm writing, what I'm thinking, and what we will be talking about throughout the week. So I would encourage everyone to do that. If you're not on Telegram yet, what in the world is going on? And I say that as I was thinking earlier this morning, I might end up consolidating everything to Substack and Substack chat in the relatively near future to have a little bit more control over content and whatnot, because, and this is not a bad thing, you see your ideas replicated all over the place by good people and bad people and whatever else. And it makes sense to restrict the access to that, to people who want to take advantage of that and waste my time and the rest of it. So hopefully that makes sense. And I saw a Rumble rant in the chat. Goodbeard, $20. Really enjoy your work, Chris. Thank you very much, Goodbeard. And I think that might do it as far as rants and subscriptions go. Thank you all so very much for watching on Rumble and Substack and YouTube and Getter. Maybe there's people watching on Getter. So thank you all for participating. Thank you for the support in the show. I will be back at some point next week. That's the plan. Tuesday, probably. Same reasonable time, same reasonable podcast network. I don't have a network. Masks and lockdowns don't work. They lied to you about a pandemic, and Joe Biden was never president.
Well,
what?
You know who I am, don't you?
Well, you ain't Fiona Apple, and if you ain't Fiona Apple, I don't give a rat's ass.
What's wrong with being an angry prophet denouncing the hypocrisies of our times? What do you think, Max?
Do you want to be an angry prophet denouncing the hypocrisies of our times?
Yeah, I think I'd like to be an angry prophet denouncing the hypocrisies of our times.
It's not true. It's more true than I would perhaps prefer.
You down.
We do a little trolling. It's called We Do a Little Trolling.
What must be what? In my mind, that's the end game.
If you're listening for free and would like to support the show, the best way to do that is by signing up for a paid subscription at imyourmoderator.substack.com. You can find the info stream over on Telegram at t.me/veryreasonable. The merch site is cancelcouture.com, and for all my other links, you can visit linktree.com/imyourmoderator. And I'll see you soon. Down on the range.